So that speaks, by the way, to the earlier point where we talked about deontological ethics versus consequentialism.
Yeah.
Look, both you and I think, are very socially liberal.
Yes.
So I support transgender rights in the strongest of ways. Everybody should live free of bigotry and so on. In the pursuit and defense of that noble goal, I don't have to murder truth as a consequence of that, right?
Correct.
So it's the same thing, for example, with equity feminism versus radical feminism. Equity feminism is the idea that both sexes should be equal under the law. By that standard, both you and I are strong equity feminists.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, when it becomes a problem is that in the service of that goal, we end up creating the premise that men and women are interchangeable, indistinguishable, that all differences between men and women must be due to social construction, another idea pathogen.
Yeah.
So we're murdering truth for a higher noble goal. No, I never cede 1 millimeter of truth for any goal. I have to be deontological in the defense of truth.
Well, that's very brave of you in your line of work, because that's not something that is common in professors.
No.
Professors, they give in to,
Yes.
for the most part, they give in to the will of the crowd, and it's very strange.
I've made the following analogy. When we choose Navy SEALs, we're choosing them based on certain traits. They have to be courageous, they have to be physically fit, they have to have bravery. So imagine if we were to choose our professors in a way that we're not only choosing them based on their IQ, but on intellectual Navy SEALness, if you'd like. On Navy SEALness and their intellectual courage, right?
Yes.
But we don't pick people. As a matter of fact, most professors are invertebrate, castrated individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have a spine, nor do they have testicles, irrespective of whether they're male or female. So they may have all the intelligence in the world. As a matter of fact, all of these parasitic ideas originally were spawned by professors. So being intelligent and educated does not inoculate you against stupidity, since many of the ones who originated those ideas are the anointed professors. What they don't have is intellectual courage. And so actually on this trip that I'm meeting you here, I've met some folks that are associated with University of Texas, Austin, and now the new University of Austin, that not only do we share intellectual affinity, but more importantly, we share intellectual courage metrics. That's what is required to change the system. History is not shaped by fence sitters. It takes bold people, intellectually bold people, and we certainly don't choose our professors based on that trait.
No, I think that's a great point, that intellectual courage should be a requirement, and that it should be something that we celebrate and cherish and reward people for.
Right.
And based on an objective analysis of truth. Like,
Exactly.
because there are facts, there are some things. And like you said, like saying that someone who's a biological male cannot bear children is just a fact. It's just a fact. And if you deny that, that's cowardice. You're just scared of the crowd. You're not denying that it takes a double X chromosome and a womb and eggs and eggs fertilized by sperm inside this viable womb in order for you to conceive and ultimately give birth to a child out of your vagina. But no, they're teaching people. There was a story about a university that is facetiously teaching people how a biological man would give birth out of his penis.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, this is fucking insanity. This is the ultimate cowardice, the ultimate intellectual cowardice, because they're so terrified of the madness of the crowds, as Douglas Murray would put it, that they're literally saying, well, when a man gets pregnant, the baby must come out of his penis. Like, are you teaching people this? Like, you're out of your mind. This is this weird place that we find ourselves in, where truth is not as important as adhering to these ideological principles that are clearly inaccurate.
But the reason why they're parasitized in this way is because they're trying to adhere to a higher noble goal, which is don't hurt someone's feelings.
Right.
Don't attack their personhood. Celebrate their personhood. So again, we go back to consequentialism. If I have to murder truth so that I appear empathetic and loving and accepting of all people. Goodbye, truth. It was nice knowing you. That's wrong. I can chew gum and walk at the same time. I could be very socially conscious, as I think I can speak for both of us, but I am a dogged defender of the truth, and I will never concede an inch of the truth in the pursuit of not hurting your feelings. I remember one time on a previous show, and I actually took that quote in this book, where you said, but if you pursue, forbidden knowledge in your research and it hurts someone's feelings, what then? Do you remember what I answered you in a very...
I don't remember what you said.
I said, well, fuck your feelings. Right?
Yeah, your feelings are, like, that's the problem. Is like, there's a lot of people that get offended by things very easily. And if we start catering to them, we're not going to get anything done.
Right.
There's people that get offended by alarm clocks. They don't want to have to be somewhere on time because they're offended by the idea that they don't need as much rest as you do, or you need less rest than that, whatever. The point is that, like, anything can fall into that category as something that hurts your feelings. If you have more money than the next person, that could hurt their feelings. So you should have less money.
Right.
And we should have even distribution of income. And the merits of
called
your
Quebec.
hard... Yeah, well, yeah. Well, that's the dangers of quality of outcome, right? I mean, that's literally communism. That's how it gets going.
So let me apply what you just said in the context of, when you do research in a university, you first have to send it to an institutional review board or an ethics board, right? That ensures that the research that you will do adheres to certain ethical standards, right? So now let me give you the historical background to this and then tell you how insane it has become. So in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which has been referred to as sort of the golden era of social psychology, you could damage a person's sense of self in the pursuit of science, but there was no ethical oversight over that because it was for the betterment of science. So let me give you an example of that. Suppose I bring you into the lab. This is, let's say, in the 1960s. I'm going to do what's called the false feedback paradigm. I'm going to ask you to do an IQ test, and I'm going to falsely give you one of two experimental conditions. I'm either going to say, hey, Joe, you scored in the 99th percentile of the most intelligent people, and then I'm going to see how you solve a math problem based on this glowing feedback. Or I'm going to say, oh, Joe, based on this IQ test, you basically score lower than a newborn pigeon. Oh, okay, never mind. Let's move on to the math test, right? So I'm giving you false feedback, either glowing or not, and then I'm seeing how it affects your performance on some subsequent task.
Right.
Well, now after you finish the experiment, I debrief you, right? I say, actually, it was wrong, it was false, I just randomly put you in this condition, we didn't even do an IQ test. Now this, by the more recent standards of ethics, which is still fine, would be considered unethical, because even if I now tell you I was not truly giving you an IQ test, you'll walk away not knowing for sure whether what I just said is untrue, right? So did he now tell me that I'm not a newborn pigeon because he's just trying to assuage my feelings, but I truly am dumb as a doorknob? So it made sense that at some point we erected some ethical mechanisms to make sure that people were not damaged. But now we've taken that, to your earlier point, to such an extreme whereby I can't ask you, are you male or female? I have to have a 740-page list of all the different possibilities. I can't ask you about your cultural background because I'm going to offend you. I can't ask you about your income because that marginalizes maybe some people who don't have good income. So basically, I can't ask you anything on an experimental study or a survey because there is no way by which there isn't going to be some road by which some participant may or may not be offended. So now when I go through these ethical review processes, that's probably the thing that causes me more stress than actually conducting the study, because I know I have to jump through 900 hoops before some moron says, you're now cleared to do your studies.
And it seems like the academic world rewards this sort of intellectual cowardice. Like, if you comply, then you're a part of this group, you're a part of the system, and you're allowed to continue spreading bullshit and getting a check for it. And then your new coming group, your incoming students from the 2023 year and 2024 year of the freshman class, they're going to be more extreme. With each year, they're going to get more things are going to be on the list of offensive topics, offensive answers, offensive reactions, and it makes me wonder where this is going, because this is accelerating. This is not slowing down. And even though there's a lot of people like yourself and myself who are older who realize how preposterous this is, the young people don't, and they seem to think that not only is this better, that it's required in order to make the world a better place.
So here's some optimism along those lines. I'm hearing from a lot of teachers, including teachers at the high school level and so on, who write to me and say, my latest batch of students strike me as being less woke than previous generations, as if now the fulcrum is starting to shift. So I don't have incontestable empirical evidence, but I'm increasingly hearing that we've kind of reached the singularity, peak wokeness.
What do you think is causing this shift back?
It might be that there's been some people who've been fighting this and now they're getting bigger platforms, so things are changing. It might be that more, take for example someone who's happy to use this platform to give him kudos. Christopher Rufo. Do you know who that is?
I know his name.
So Christopher Rufo is a guy who came out of nowhere, was a journalist who became the kind of central repository of all things anti-critical race theory. He's a journalist, right? And now he has spearheaded, it was a serendipitous thing. He had never planned on being an anti-CRT activist, but through the serendipity of life, he has become sort of the honey badger of anti-CRT, and now there's all kinds of battles that are being won by parents who are finding their spine, who are going to these school board meetings, who are saying, I'm tired of this bullshit. And so it doesn't take much for people to be ignited and find their courage. And so I'm getting the sense, again, this is just from the trench that I'm, the reports that I'm getting, that more and more people are now willing to speak out. It's a domino effect, right? This one speaks out, so I speak out. And so my feeling is that if we're able to ignite the silent majority into speaking, as you know, the blue-haired Taliban are a minority. It's not as though there's millions of them on every campus.
Just very vocal.
They're just very vocal, very committed. They have the ear of the administration. So very few committed people can keep the rest of us in check. Most people are not on board with all that nonsense.
Yeah.
And I receive millions of emails that attest to that.
Well, we see that, I'm sorry, but we see that with Disney, the stock crashing. We see with Netflix, the stock crashing.
So there's all kinds of little evidence that's coming out to suggest that we might have reached peak wokeness, and we're going through, there are now a lot of institutions that are trying to position themselves as a bit less woke. And, the University of Chicago Declaration, the Princeton. So my feeling is, maybe I'm being too optimistic, I think we've reached the maximum of the parasitic infestation, and may reason reign again.
Well, may reason reign again, and may debate take place again too. Let's let opposing sides discuss things. Come up with a champion for your left-wing idea, and allow that champion to debate someone from the right. And then if the person from the right wins, do better. Come back with a better argument. Let's do it again. And maybe you're wrong. Maybe it turns out that this guy's going to convince you of certain things, or maybe he's wrong. Maybe you're going to convince the audience of things. When I was a child, when I was in high school, Barney Frank, who was a liberal in Massachusetts, was debating someone from the moral majority. And I got to watch, and the moral majority was like this.
He was the first openly gay congressman.
He wasn't openly gay at the time.
Oh, I see.
He is now, and he was the first openly gay, but at the time he was not open. So anyway, Barney Frank, who's this brilliant man in my high school, is debating this guy, and I found it fascinating because I got a chance to see two different perspectives, and Barney Frank was just much better. He was just more rational, more well-read. It was just, and the other guy was sort of this like kind of cookie-cutter, rah-rah, conservative, God, liberty, justice for all, that kind of thing. It was just like he was reading off of a playbook where Barney Frank had a much more nuanced and much more convincing perspective, and it was great. it was great because me and all these other kids that were like 14, 15 years old got to sit in this class and watch these two people debate. Now today you can't have that.
Yeah.
You can't have that. The other guy who thinks that abortion is against God and that homosexuality should be outlawed, and that was like one of his perspectives, his anti-homosexual perspective, which was ironic because Barney Frank is gay, but he wasn't. Nobody knew that. But when that all took place, it was very beneficial to watch it play out, and the crowd let it all play out. You know, there was claps when people did well, but you're watching this intellectual discourse. You're watching a sparring match,
Right.
and Barney Frank was the more skilled at that, and that's how it's supposed to go. That's what's beneficial for everybody watching.
And beyond the philosophical arguments for why we should have open debate, let's link it to your personal reality. The Joe Rogan show is in large part popular, other than your infinite charisma and so on, is because of, I'm undoubtedly sure that you score very high on the open-mindedness, right? And it is that open-mindedness that created this, quote, safe space of differing idea. That's what resonates with people. Today you can bring Gatsad, and tomorrow you can bring someone who is completely anti-Gatsad, and you have a great conversation with both, and people reward you for that with a big Spotify deal. So there are even very concrete, earthly, non-philosophical reasons to be open-minded. It results in...
I guess so. You can't fake that, though, I don't think. I think it would come out eventually. But you know what's interesting to me is that when I have progressive people on the podcast, I get no pushback at all.
From them or from the audience?
From the right.
From the right.
Now, when I have someone from the right on, whether it's Dan Crenshaw or Ben Shapiro, I get accused of being a fake left-wing person, a fake progressive. I get all this hate, and you moved to Texas, and you became a fucking your red state, and all. It's only he's captured by the right. He doesn't even realize it. It's hilarious. The mental gymnastics people will go through, even if I argue with them, even if I have them on and I don't agree with what they're saying about many things, which oftentimes is the case. It does not matter. The tolerance level from the left has evaporated.
So I've got a theory for this. It's actually in my, forgive the shameless plug, my next, this is not this book, this is the next book. The next book, which I'm just finishing wrapping up, is tentatively titled A Recipe for the Good Life. And so I look at all different metrics that have been studied relating to well-being and happiness, and I infuse it with personal anecdotes. So at one point I talk about, does political ideology affect your well-being and your happiness? And so I look at the literature, and a lot of the literature finds that conservatives score higher on happiness, to your point, score higher on happiness and well-being as compared to the liberals. And so I was trying to...
I'll tell you why.
So you go ahead and then I'll tell you my reason.
The liberals are unhappy that the conservatives exist.
So they're
So
more
how could they be
ideal.
happy?
Right. So I'm going to add to what you just said. The conservative, at the root of the word conservative in the etymology, is to conserve, right? So there's a set of beliefs, of values, of foundational principles that are worthy of conserving. So I wake up existentially, if I am a conservative, and I say, yeah, there might be at the margins bad things, but I'm happy because life is good. There are things worthy of conserving. The liberal, on the other hand, is looking for the magical utopia, unicornia that's around the corner. The current world sucks. I need to burn it down so that I could start fresh. And so I think that's why you get the differing venom from the two. The conservative is happy with the status quo. The blue-haired Taliban wants to burn it down.
This is interesting because conservationists, a lot of them tend to be liberal.
It's true. They're trying to conserve nature.
Yeah.
Well, cognitive consistency is not a hallmark of the left.
But conservationists who also participate in outdoor activities like hunting and fishing tend to be more Republican.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're
Interesting. And they really are conservationists because they actually contribute financially. The vast majority of the money that goes to wildlife habitat conservation, that goes to wildlife biologists, that goes to making sure that populations of wild animals are healthy, vast majority comes from hunters.
Is that true?
Billions of dollars.
Anecdotally, or
Yes.
the data's
No,
been
no, the real
played?
data.
Okay.
Yeah, the Pittman-Robertson Act. It's an act that was created that, so it's not just hunters, it's also gun owners. So people who buy ammunition, firearms, people who are just gun enthusiasts who never hunt, they contribute, find out what the exact amount is. I believe it's 10%. So 10% of this act goes to conservation of wildlife habitat. It goes to setting up these structures to make sure that these wetlands are preserved for migrating birds and all these animals that require certain populations in order to be healthy. They'll either import new animals into these areas,
Right.
or they will cull some of them, so they'll increase the amount of tags that are available. All that is paid for by hunters. By people that are trying to shoot the animals and eat them.
Do we know what is the ratio of avowed Republicans to Democrats who are hunters? Rough
It's staggering.
90-10?
It's probably somewhere in that range. Yeah, I would like to know. I wonder if anybody's ever done that study.
It
but
has to be.
The ones that I meet,
Are all Republicans?
they're like, it's like 80%. There's a few that are liberal that become concerned with regenerative farming, and then some of them become vegetarians, but their body doesn't go well with it. It's like they have problems with their health, and so then they reluctantly start reintroducing meat, but they want to do it in an ethical manner. So then they start hunting. That's happened to quite a few friends that I have that are liberal, but that do hunt. But most of them are conservative.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I did, in this book, I looked at the distribution of Republicans to Democrats, certainly within academia, and as you can imagine, it's overwhelmingly tilted.
Overwhelming.
Depending on the discipline. Some disciplines could be 120 to 0, the ratio. I mean, literally not a single Republican.
What is the discipline where it's more balanced? What's the most balanced?
So the most balanced in this particular study I have in mind, which is probably the most exhaustive one that's been done, engineering was 1.6 to 1. Now, 1.6 to 1 is actually very lopsided according to the metrics of stats. I mean, there's something called the odds ratio when you're calculating the efficacy of a drug. If you get 1.2 to 1, that means the drug is effective. It's 20% more effective. So 1.6 to 1 is already quite lopsided. That's the least. You start getting into 5 to 1, 10 to 1, 15 to 1, 30 to 1. And then as you get into the more activist fields, it turns into 60 to 1, 120 to 0. So again, it's not that there's anything inherently less scientific about sociology. Sociology could be as scientific as physics. The problem is that sociology is more prone to be parasitized by ideology, whereas physics is less prone. So the pursuit of these disciplines either makes them more amenable to adhere to the scientific method or less. So oftentimes people, again, to go to an earlier point, people think that I am denigrating sociology as a lesser than. No. As a matter of fact, it's probably harder to study social systems involving human beings than to study the chemical structure of a particular compound in chemistry that is a lot more deterministic. So there is nothing unscientific about the endeavor of sociology. What makes it unscientific is that it doesn't adhere to the scientific method. It becomes an activist field rather than a scientific field. So if we can get rid of the activism and leave it out of the university, we'll get rid of a lot of this bullshit.
It's just stunning for a person who's not an academic to see so much intellectual, ideological capture that's involved in so many of these disciplines. They're just the Pittman-Robertson Act. Did you Google that? Like what the percentages?
It's 10% for handguns, 11 for long guns and ammo.
Yeah. So that's a large amount of money. And how much money does it generate per year? In the 76 years since its inception, over $7 billion has been collected from manufacturers and has been made available to states, including over $106 million in Mississippi. This partnership of hunters and sport shooters with the firearms and ammunition industry, by far America's largest contributor to wildlife conservation and public access to our natural resources.
Now, isn't that so? If you were to ask people their perceptions of which of the two parties is more committed to environmentalists, I'm willing to bet that almost everybody would say it's the Democrats, right? Occasional Cortex AOC is someone who.
Occasional Cortex.
And by the way, someone told me that Michael Savage uses it, and that pissed me off because They were saying, "Oh, you stole it from him." I
No,
only found out
no.
independently that he used it.
You
So I
didn't
wanted,
steal it
I
from
wanted to
anybody.
give him the kudos, but I came up with that joke. I studied the brain,
sure you
occasional cortex. So occasional
I'll
cortex.
go to war with you on that.
Oh, aren't you sweet? I'm maladaptively honest to a fault, so
Yes.
I would never do that. So occasional cortex is the linchpin. Right? She's the new Green Deal, right? So I'm willing to bet that even Republicans would probably not know of this. Don't you think?
A lot no. The ones that hunt no. What percentage of hunters are Republican versus Democrat?
Trying to find that out. I couldn't get I found like a poll of 1,000 hunters and other. And they're answering other questions. It didn't say like, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat.
I bet it's like sociologists
Well,
the other way.
So earlier I was saying about the distribution of Democrats to Republicans in the in academia, but I found a study that was looking at within medicine. So you are an anesthesiologist, you are a surgeon, you are a psychiatrist, you are a dermatologist. Does the likelihood of you being Republican or Democrat change across disciplines of medicine? And there are profound differences. I thought that was fascinating. This is not my study, it was someone else's study. So psychiatry, pediatrics scored very, very high on the left. Orthopedic surgeons, and infectious disease also scored very high on the left, which we might presume from some of the COVID interventions. Orthopedic surgeons were a lot more right. Is that interesting?
Well, it's a structure thing, right? Like there's no room for funny business and shenanigans and mandates when it comes to fixing your knee.
Fixing Achilles tendon.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. It's just like this is what it is.
Yeah.
And I bet the military very high on the right.
On the right, exactly.
Very high on the right. It's well, the thing about hunting in particular that I think leads it to be very high is not just the use of guns, which is of course that alone, just firearm laws and regulations, like the people on the left overwhelmingly want to restrict those because it's part of the ideology. But it's also the hard work. It's very difficult. Hunting's very difficult, especially mountain hunting. I would imagine that the people that do like elk hunting and the people that do like the real high mountain stuff, it's overwhelmingly conservative people.
Right.
It's fucking hard. Like, there's no equity in hunting. You don't, you have to fucking put in the work. And if you're a part of a hunting party and everybody only eats if you do your work, you can't say, you're being fat phobic. Like, no, you have to get up and fucking go. And if you're 100 pounds overweight, people are going to look at you like you're a problem for the rest of the tribe. The fact that we have gotten to a place where there's so much comfort and so much leisure time and people are so protected and insulated by the overwhelming amount of resources that we have that you can make that argument that it's okay to be fat, it's okay to be, the body positivity. That only exists because of excess.
I'm wondering, forgive me, I don't mean to be psychoanalytic on you, but your disdain for obesity has come across in many of at least our chats. Is it because you ascribe a particular trait to someone who is willing to let themselves go, that is kind of a personal injury to your sense of
I'm afraid of seeing it in myself.
I see.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that people are upset at something they see in other people. It's things that they would never want to see in themselves.
Right.
Like, I don't like liars because I'd never want to see myself lying.
Yeah.
I don't like people that are weak. I don't like people that just give up. It drives me crazy.
Right.
Because I don't ever want to see that in myself. It's the thing I fear the most. So what is obesity? It's like, are you blind? Do you not recognize that you've done something horrible to your body?
Right.
Of course you know.
Right.
You've just chosen that it's too difficult to act and do
But I have a
something.
slow fiber.
Oh, me too. Really? I have hypothyroidism.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
I was being facetious. But
No,
yeah.
I really do.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. When I found out about it, I had 8% body fat. Yeah.
Wow.
I was fucking ripped, and I was like, why am I getting headaches? And the doctor's like, you have a hard time losing weight? I'm like, no. And he was like, you have hypothyroidism. It's Hashimoto's disease. Yeah. And so they prescribed thyroid medication, but it just stopped. Because at nighttime, I would get these vicious headaches. and I would go to sleep like I got shot with a tranquilizer dart. I was so tired. But my willpower and my discipline is what kept me working out. But I had a six-pack. I was ripped, and so they're like, this is unusual. Like usually people who have hypothyroidism, they gain weight.
Exactly.
But I just worked out all the time. I just made sure I worked out, period. Like I didn't use it as an excuse. Like people that use that as an excuse, like I'm tired all the time when I exercise. I still fucking do it. I just make myself do it. Like that's a possibility. That's a choice.
But you enjoy it though? Because I enjoy exercise.
Yes. Yes.
It's not a chore for me to do.
Well, clearly when you get healthier, you're enjoying it even more because you've seen the fruits of your labor. But also, once you get going, once your body starts sweating, effort feels good.
Yeah.
You know, especially like when you do it and then you have those breaks in between sets where you get to take some deep breaths and you realize, all right, I did these things that I thought were really difficult to do. Like if I said, I'm going to do 50 burpees, and I do 50 burpees. Like that, you did it. Like, and that little reward for hard work and for effort, that's very important for people. And especially in this world that we live in where we have these bodies that were designed to run away from predators and fend off invaders, and they don't get any fucking use at all. You just sit down at a chair. And when you do that, you get depressed and you're filled with anxiety. Like, gee, I wonder why. When people tell me they're anxious, oh, I have anxiety. I have anxiety. Okay, do you also have exercise?
Right.
You don't have exercise.
Right.
Well, what a coincidence. You don't have exercise. And then the thing that you get when you don't exercise is prevalent, which is anxiety. Exercise, rigorous, hardcore exercise is clinically proven to be better than SSRIs for dealing with depression. They've shown better results for anxiety for people who exercise vigorously than almost anything.
So
Other than like just fucking hardcore benzodiazepines, which are very difficult to take.
I'm going to share this probably for the first time ever publicly, and I'm doing it on the biggest forum in the world. Last year in July, I was driving to go get the roti street Peruvian chicken with my wife and kids. I had absolutely no sense of doom or anxiety or stress, and I got out of the blue what ended turned out to be a panic attack. I'd never ever had this. I'm an intense person, but I'm very mellow.
First time in your life.
First time. So I had a few times where I felt kind of an anxiety rush. I think it started when I was getting a lot of death threats that required for me to have security and so on. So that's the first time that I felt kind of this whoosh. But it was totally manageable. I've never experienced anything. And so we were driving, and I told my wife, I feel like I need to stop. My heart is really beating fast. I started getting tingles in my fingers. I said, am I getting a stroke? Am I getting a heart attack? And so we went to the hospital, and very quickly they said, it's a panic attack, which I've never had a recurrence of it. I can't explain why I had it that time and I haven't had it other time. It turns out, by the way, that the attending physician, I said, because I'm always aware more than I do, you're a public figure. I'm known, and he goes, I know who you are. When I saw the name that I was, right? And then he kind of told me, maybe you need to mellow out and not be so, he gave me the usual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying all this because as I felt other times this kind of rush coming that might lead to that, what would help me is to right away start exercising.
Yeah.
And when I would exercise, it's as if like a gag reflex. You know what? Sometimes you're nauseous, you're nervous. If you gag, it releases it. So exerting the physical, pressure that's pent up on you. Then my wife would say, "How do you feel?" I say, "Oh, I feel great, fine." So I think I have anecdotal evidence to support what you're saying.
Yeah, I think most people do that have experienced that have had these bad feelings, then exercise and felt good afterwards. It's the release of endorphins. I mean, it's all science. They know what happens to the body when you exercise. Exertion feels good. There's something very valuable. And if someone's overweight and you're saying, well, I can't run, I can't exercise vigorously, you don't have to. You just walk. Just go walk. Especially if you're overweight, I would encourage you to just walk.
Right.
You don't have to do something that hard.
Now, what I'm about to say next is completely speculative because I've often tried to introspect as to, what caused that particular episode. And it kind of relates back to our earlier comment about, how I lost weight. So something that I suffered from, not in a clinical sense, but I'm very health anxious in that because I'm punctilious, because I'm perfectionist, I always worry, is something looming in the background? And of course, once I'm overweight, it's a lot more looming in the back, and it could be around the corner, right? And so, as I was losing weight, but I had never gone to see a physician for several years, I was always ruminating about the possibility that once I see my physician for the first time in 3 years since I last got my checkup, could there be something that ends the party that I'm on? Could there be a result, right? And as we were driving to go to get the chicken, I saw, and again, I'm speculating, but it makes sense. I saw a bus sign ad in the back of the bus, like city bus, that said, could you recognize the signs of a stroke if it's happening?
Oh, Jesus.
And so I think I literally internalized it, got the panic attack by putting it to myself, developed the symptoms of a panic attack that mimic these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I said, that's it. I'm about to die in front of my children. And it just gets worse and worse and worse, right? So for anybody who's listening out there, there is hope that you could never have it again. But when you do have it, it is a surreal feeling.
Well, I will speculate as well, and I think that completely makes sense. And also, I think it makes sense that you finally doing something about your health and losing weight makes you also anxious about the fact that it took you so long to do it, and what kind of damage have you done in the process. Yeah, because when you were 86 pounds heavy, which is so crazy for me to say, I can't believe you were actually 86 pounds heavy, but that's how you were when I met you. That is terrible for your body.
It is.
Your body carrying around all that extra tissue is just, it's the worst. And, it's like, it's not my disdain for people that are overweight. I have love for everybody, and I certainly have love for people that are overweight. I have a lot of friends that are morbidly obese. I have friends that are comedians.
One of your comedians who always accused, I don't know his name.
Joey Diaz?
Yeah.
Yeah. Joey's lost quite a bit of weight.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he lost quite a bit of weight during the pandemic. He was really worried about it.
You're setting us straight one guest at a time.
Listen, I try, man. It's just I try not to do. I come off mean sometimes because I'm mean to me. So I'm mean. If I'm mean to me about stuff like that, I'm mean to
Your friends.
my friends. And sometimes they don't want to hear it, and I'm like, okay, but I'm just telling you.
It's so funny you said
want
this
you to
because
die.
I didn't, not to be charitable, but a lot of people got upset when you had fat shamed me, and I think my wife and I were talking, and I said, you know what? How about I look at it this way? If he didn't care, he wouldn't have said that
No,
stuff.
I've had a lot of fat people on, never said a fucking word to them.
There
Like,
you
I love
go.
you.
Oh,
I want you to be
Right back
healthy
at you.
and wealthy.
Thank you.
And I'm happy that you are now. I'm really happy. It's beautiful. And I've been following it very closely. I follow you on social media.
You
and I've
sent
been
me
paying
one such a
attention.
nice message. Man, I'm seeing you on those. That really made my day. That was so beautiful.
Well, it made
Thank
my
you.
day to see you thrive. It
Yeah.
really makes me
Thank you.
happy. It makes me happy because I know how hard it is. It's very hard to change your lifestyle. It's very hard to change habits because we get ingrained in these patterns in our head, whether they're good or bad. And one of the things that I could say, like people say, oh, it must be hard for you to exercise every day. I'm like, I don't think it's not. It's not. Nah, it's not really. No, it's hard when you haven't been exercising to start.
Yeah.
Once you have momentum, it's not that hard. It's like when
Absolutely.
people say it's. Joey Diaz said this. Joey's a very wise man, and one of the things he said about stand-up comedy, he said, it's the hardest, easiest thing you'll ever do. Because when he's on, when that guy's on, he, in my opinion, is the funniest guy that's ever lived. And when he's on, I've seen a lot of great comedians. And like, there's great comedians that are alive today, but no one makes me laugh like that guy. And when he's on, it's effortless. It's effortless. He's just in the groove. But getting there required decades and hard work and writing and performing and constantly experimenting with how to deliver material and how to do it correctly. Once you've got it, though, then it's just about maintaining it. That's why you see the great ones of like Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle. They're constantly working. They're constantly going at it. If they had to start over from scratch as a beginner, as an open micer, that's hard.
Right.
Like, that's why I'm very encouraging of young, up-and-coming comedians, or even old. I don't give a fuck what age you start, but people who are just starting out in comedy. I'm very encouraging of them because I want them to know, like, hey, man, we all suck in the beginning. It is a hard grind, but it's a beautiful fraternity of people. And if you can make it in this community, if you can get to a point where you're funny, you will have a really enjoyable life. It's a great way to make a living.
I saw you on a documentary where I think it was a documentary about stand-up. Do you know which one recently?
I've done a couple of
You've
those.
done it? Okay,
yeah.
I don't know which one. I was fascinated by it because I think what was being discussed is the creative process in generating material. And I'm fascinated by that because I can explain my creative process of how I write a book, but I've never attempted to write a set of jokes. I could be naturally funny, but I don't know the mechanism. I don't know how a chef is creative. I don't know how a painter, but the act of creation excites me. And so I remember I had watched that particular documentary, and I thought it was so cool to see all these It was, I'm trying to think which one it was. It was maybe a 2-part series. Does it ring a bell? Do you know which one?
I've done
You've done a
few
few.
of them, and I haven't done one in a while, but everyone does it differently. Some people write everything in joke form, and they think in joke. Like Tony Hinchcliffe is one of my favorite comedians, a good friend of mine, and
Right.
he writes in joke form, and he thinks in joke form. Like he's the guy. Like if something happened, like if Jamie says something, and Tony has this sly look on his face, I always look at him, and he'll have like the perfect line.
Right.
Like he's like the best off the cuff guy I've ever met. And he hosts this show called Kill Tony that's on Monday nights on YouTube. And the beautiful thing about that show is complete amateurs and professionals, and they all throw their name into a hat. And he reaches in and pulls a name out, and that person will go on stage live on YouTube and in front of hundreds of thousands of people that are going to watch it, and they'll do 1 minute of stand-up comedy. And then Tony will either encourage them or mock them, or they try to find humor in it, but it's all in good spirits and it's all in good fun. And in
That takes courage.
it does take courage. But my point was that his specific style of writing is very different than mine, which is I either get an idea and I write it down or put it in my phone, or I write in essays. So I write essays where I just like a subject, like
Sex differences.
sex difference, and then just start, and then I just like
I'll put that
I'll
to good
just
use.
I might type out 1,000 words of nonsense for one sentence, and that one sentence is like there's something there, and I'll pull that out, and I'll put it aside. I'll copy and paste that somewhere else, and then I'll start over again with that one sentence that I know that's good. I'll keep that above, and then right below it, I'll give it a couple of spaces, and right below it, I'll readdress the subject. Try to do it from new eyes.
So if you have to come up with new material for a 1-hour special,
Yeah.
how many pages of content is going to correspond to the 1 hour?
9 out of 10 pages suck.
Really?
Yeah, if you looked at my notes, you're like, this guy's fucking terrible. But the thing is, like, I don't know. I'm not writing down the things that I think are good. I'm just writing, right? So I'm trying to let my mind find the things that are good, right? So as I'm talking about a subject, I'm just So if that's true, then why is this? And then like, aha, I got something. And then I'll pull that aside and I'll try to figure out a clever intro to that, and then maybe I'll try it the other way, and I'll start with the premise first, or maybe I'll start with the punch. I mix it up, but I find that my best writing is when I write in just an essay form and then extract.
And are you trying to write every day, or does it
Yeah,
come-
I write basically every day. I do something every day. I mean, I'll take a day off, but I feel like if I don't sit down every day, review my notes and go over my material, I feel like I'm doing myself a disservice, because there's so many bits that I have that are in my act that have been on comedy specials that I've done that just came from sitting down and writing. Some of them came from nowhere. Like, some of them came from nowhere. You know, like I was with a friend of mine once, and we were talking, and she was laughing about this overweight woman who had all this makeup on and this short dress, and she was like looking at this like crazy image of this woman, and she goes, "What is she thinking?" I go, "I'll tell you exactly what she's thinking. She's just letting everybody know it's not the best ride, but there's no line." And her and I were howling. We were laughing so hard. That came out of the ether, right?
Right.
And that made it onto a comedy special. That came out of nowhere. So sometimes it's like that. Sometimes they just come.
Do you test the stuff on trusted audience Of
Like
your friends before you do it the first time professionally?
Sometimes I'll run it by a professional. Sometimes I'll run it by Tony or one of my friends. I'll like have an idea, but most of the time I run it on the stage. So most of the time, like I've been doing this Johnny Depp Amber Heard chunk, and I've got like 2 different versions. So Friday night I did 2 sets in Phoenix. I did one version of it the first set, and a different version the second set. Just trying to figure out, and so it's baby legs, obviously, 'cause the trial just started. I need to figure out if it's even going to work. Like, it gets laughs, but I'm like, you always have to realize that if something gets laughs and it's in the news right now, it doesn't mean it's really good. It could be that they're just reacting to it because they want to laugh at this crazy fucking trial. It doesn't necessarily mean the material's good. So you can't rely on the moment being novel, right? Like there's this moment and everybody's excited about this moment and they're all aware of it, so they're tuned into it. It's got to be good a year from now, right? Where it's like if you had to do a joke tomorrow about, you know, someone like Brett Kavanaugh being inducted into the Supreme Court, like, it's got to be good a year from now. It's got to be good. It's got to be a good chunk. It's got to have good material. It can't just be familiar.
So I want to ask. I want to tie what you just said to some scientific principles. So there's something called 2-factor theory in psychology of persuasion. The idea being that every time you are exposed to something, it is incremental. The first time that I hear a lecture, I pick up a lot of stuff, but the second time I pick up more. But it reaches a asymptote. After I watch the same lecture 18 times, I can't extract anything from it.
Right.
An opposing factor is what's called negative peak, boredom. The first time I hear a funny ad that's surprising, it makes me crack up. But by the second time, it decays very quickly.
Yes.
The combination of these two results in what's called a converted future. Okay, so I'm wondering how we would apply that principle, let's say, to the feeling of novelty that you, as the comedian, experience when you deliver that joke, right? The first time you say it, it's exciting.
Yeah.
The 73rd time that you say it during your tour, are you able to deliver it with as much spice and spunk, or are you entering, as the deliverer of the message, the negative peak?
That's part of the art. The art is you have to be in the moment when you're discussing the subject. So you have to care. If you don't care, the audience knows. If you're phoning it in, they know. You can say the right words with the right amount of pause, with the right timing, and it doesn't matter. They have to fucking know that you're tuned in. If you're not tuned, they smell it. They feel it. It's like there's what's going on when you're doing stand-up is some kind of weird sort of mass hypnosis. That's what's going on.
Right. And
to think that it's just jokes is not totally understanding the art form completely, because everyone knows, everyone that's done stand-up that's had a killer set, when you're killing, you have this feeling where you're just everyone's like synced. It's like there's energy in the room, like you feel a wave that you're all riding, and you're as much of a passenger as you are the driver, and you're all riding it together. That's the best time. That's the best time for the audience. Best time for the
So of all the, I don't think I've ever asked you this. So you've got many hats. You've got this show. You've got the other things you do stand up. If there is one that I told you, you must choose as the one. Is it a fair question to ask you that? What would it be?
I definitely wouldn't want to choose, because I think one of the things that I really like is that they all
variety.
complement each other. They complement each other as well. Like doing MMA, for instance. One of the things about, first of all, I love the sport, and it's a great honor for me to be able to do commentary for the UFC, and it means a lot to me, and it always means a lot to me. I never take it casually. I always take it very seriously. I'm never funny. Like, I'm not cracking jokes. I'm not trying to be funny.
Yeah.
I mean, if something funny comes up, it's just like, that's fine, but my job is to explain what's happening and to put color to, I'm literally a color commentary guy. That's helped by comedy, because I talk live all the time. Yeah. So like when I'm at the UFC and millions of people are watching and the light goes on and the camera's pointed at me and I have to explain what's going on, I have zero feeling of, oh my God, always people are watching, because people are always watching me.
Right.
Like they're watching me when I do this, they're watching me when I do stand-up, and I'm well aware when I stumble my words. I'm well aware when things don't come out the way I wanted it to, where I'm searching for the correct sentence and it doesn't really fit right, and I'm not warming up enough. Because there is like an intellectual warm-up process. I'm sure you're aware of that too, that feeling. So they complement each other. All three things complement each other. Podcasting is complemented by stand-up. Stand-up is the most natural. Stand-up is you don't get a chance to redo it. You can't say, actually what I meant to say is this. You know, like you can, there's so much wiggle room in podcasting, which is probably the easiest. Podcast is probably the easiest. And then stand-up is the hardest. And MMA, it's easy with a caveat. It's easy for me because I'm a massive fan and I watch fights constantly. I'm always watching them on YouTube. And this is something that's been a passion of mine my entire life. So from the time I was a boy up until now, I've never not followed combat sports. I've never not watched all the big fights. I've never not paid attention. I've never not trained. I've never not. So it's easy for me to plug into it because it means a lot to me. But if someone was just applying it as a job, so say if you didn't give a shit about MMA, but you were like, you know what would be good if I was an MMA commentator? MMA is really popular. Maybe I should become one of those. With no, I'm not into training. It's not a part of my life. But I'm just gonna learn a lot about it. Good luck.
Right.
Good luck. Good luck. That shit would take decades, and you're gonna get things wrong. People are gonna get so mad at you. You're gonna say the wrong name for a kick, or you're gonna give the wrong advice about the way they need to position their feet or the way they need to move. You're gonna fuck it up. And then the people that know are going to be so mad. One of the things that I'm very fortunate that I have that job. Very, very fortunate. But I say I'm very fortunate. Everyone knows I'm very fortunate. I know that they know. They know that I know, right? And they also know that I'm legit. Like, I really care.
Authenticity.
Yeah.
We talked about earlier.
There's not a moment when I'm watching a great fight where I'm pretending.
Right.
I am fucking 100% tuned into it. They know I'm one of them. Right? So, like, when I'm talking about technique, when I'm talking about like style matchups and what's fascinating about it, they know I'm 100% genuine. If you're just a sports guy and you're bullshitting, we've had those sports guys who come in and try to add like sports guy terminology they might use for baseball or football or what have you, and they try to apply that to MMA. MMA people get mad. They get mad.
Yeah.
Because it's a more personal form of competition. It's more personal, more intense. It's like you're literally putting yourself in that.
Well, I remember maybe the first time that I came on your show, you said something that always stuck with me. You were drawing an analogy between the honesty that is required when you are a stand-up comic, when you're fighting, you're into the ring, can't hire you. And then you analogized it to when I have to speak in front of an audience about academic stuff, and you said that all of these three pursuits you can't bullshit because they're going to learn.
Yeah.
And I love that because I am someone who is authentic to a fault. And so I love the idea that if you walk into the ring, you can't fake it.
Right.
If you're not prepared, you're going to get pummeled. If you go up in front of an audience, you're not funny, regrettably people are going to respond accordingly. If I get up in front of an audience and I start espousing bullshit, people are going to, I'm on this show. People are going to listen to every syllable that I utter. And so I think for me what protects me is that I'm very epistemically humble. In other words, when I know something, I walk with the swagger of someone who knows what he's talking about. But then if you ask me about, so what are the consequences of the legalization of marijuana in Canada, I'm going to say, you know what, I don't know enough about this topic. And so having that epistemic humility protects me against the prying eyes because I am very modulated as to what I know and what I don't know. And of course, Confucius talked about this many thousands of years ago. And so I think that honesty element is so beautiful. And so people ask me, do you get nervous before you get on Joe Rogan? And I say, no, he's a friend. I know I'm going to have a good time. I don't think, just like you, that there's anybody watching me. The number one thing that makes me stressed about coming on the show is, am I going to have to go to the bathroom during the 3 hours?
If you have to go, you let me know.
I know you always say that.
Well, just let me know. We'll pause
That's literally
Yeah.
the only thing that worries me.
Well, your honesty is very important. I mean, and you are obviously honest to a fault. There's no fault to being honest, so it's not. That's a weird statement, but It's your, it's so that people know they can trust you.
Yeah.
If you're like you are, where you know so much about psychology, and you know so much about the mind, and you know so much about the way people think and why they think, and what the evolutionary basis for those things are, you can enlighten people in a way that they can just accept your knowledge because they know that you're being honest.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's so valuable.
And
that's
you know,
so valuable.
one of the biggest thrills I get is, as you might imagine, given your platform, I receive innumerable emails from people. Someone will say, I got into evolutionary psychology because I followed the stuff that you were talking about with Joe Rogan. And which leads me to another point, which, again, not to blow complimentary smoke up your beautiful behind, but in the parasitic mind, I tell the story in chapter 1 of the haughtiness of academia. And the story that I tell is I was at Stanford speaking at the business school, about as big of an academic mecca as you can get. And the gentleman who had hosted me, the night before for dinner, said, "Oh, you know Joe Rogan was on the show." Yeah. Well, we don't condone that at Stanford. I said, well, what do you mean? What is it? Said, well, we don't do sexy research so we can get on Joe Rogan. I said, well, I don't do research so I can get on Joe Rogan, but I can do research and get on Joe Rogan. Surely you would think that popularizing your ideas to millions of people might be worthwhile in addition to publishing in peer-reviewed journal. And his answer was, yeah, well, we don't do it. Well,
He's just saying that because he hasn't been on.
Exactly. It's an ego.
I've had a lot of people from Stanford on.
Well, but not this guy. But by the way, when I started coming on the show, I don't think you had yet many professors who had come on. I think now everybody wants to come on Joe Rogan because...
Yeah, you were one of the... What year did you first
I might have been the first...
what year was
the
it?
The first time, 2014.
I don't know if you were the first professor, but you were certainly one of them. I mean, that's 8 years ago. Isn't that crazy?
That's 8 years ago.
Time flies,
That's
baby.
unbelievable.
Ooh.
Do you foresee doing this forever, or do you ever see...
I enjoy it. I don't think about it. I don't think about whether I'll keep doing it. I thought about it when I was going to build a giant building. When I came out here, I was going to buy a piece of land and build, and I'm like,
For what purpose?
build a fucking crazy podcast empire.
Is that right?
Build a giant studio. I'll show you what we're doing here afterwards.
Yeah.
But I thought about it for a moment. Then I'm like, what do you think? Why? I just do what I like to do. And as long as I can do what I like to do, I just do what I like to do. If it becomes like pragmatic, if I have to sit down and go, well, this is not tenable anymore. This is like not manageable. This is too much of this and that. But it's not. So I don't have to think about it.
So if you don't mind me asking, you've had recent stuff with Spotify and this thing taken off and that. Would that be construed as something that affects your enjoyment of doing a podcast?
What affects my enjoyment is whether I enjoy it while I do it. And I always enjoy it because I always pick things off. So like I don't have, there's not a managerial department or there's no executives. There's no one.
Right.
So if you see, like yesterday I had the Black Keys on. I love that. They're fucking awesome. They were great. And like I'm friends with them and they contacted me and they said, hey, we got an album coming out. I'm like, fuck yeah, come on. Like that's the process. So there's no filter. So the audience knows there's no filter. They're aware of this. So they know that if I'm talking to you, it's because I enjoy our conversation.
Yeah.
So that's always going to be good. And when it's not, I'll just quit. When I was just like, I don't want to do that anymore. I just quit.
So I recently saw you on Instagram posting about Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah.
And so can we gear to that?
Sure, please.
So in the next book I'm working with, doing the Recipe for a Good Life, of course I get into the history of all sorts of cultures that have explored the good life. It's not as though I'm the first guy to write about this. Probably one of the topics of the book that most written about. None have been as prolific as the ancient Greeks. And so when I saw your thing about Marcus Aurelius, I was about to write you to say, well, I've come to that same realization because, so as I was doing my research for the book, every time I would get an insight that I thought was original to me, I'd say, that fucker Epictetus has already said it 2,000 years ago.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
crazy.
it reminds me, and I want to give him kudos on the show. So do you know who Nassim Taleb is?
Sure.
Yeah, so Nassim is a good friend of mine. He's a fellow Lebanese. And so many years ago, he was kind of egging me, teasing me, saying, I don't really understand what you study in psychology, Gad. Everything that there is to know about psychology and human nature, the ancient Greeks have already covered it. And so I mean, he was just egging me on. But then many years later, as I'm preparing for this book, I'm like, I think he might be right. We might be empirically validating what they've already philosophized. But so your post about Marcus Aurelius really resonated with me at exactly that same moment.
It's quite fascinating when you read his writings.
It's unbelievable.
Because he was so wise, and his decisions for what he would concentrate on and not concentrate on, and how he would accept people's flaws and mistakes that they'd made as if they had never made them, and this just approach to stoicism and his philosophy on life. The Greeks and the Romans, and if you look at the history of these ancient civilizations that dominated the world at that period of time, and we can get a kind of an understanding of how they thought about things. It's, to me, one of the more amazing things about history is to peer into it's almost like you have a little bit of a time machine, to peer into the mindset of these people that were so wise thousands and thousands of years ago, and that their words are applicable today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that speaks to the universality of the human condition, right? So I always tell my students when I'm teaching about evolutionary theory, I say, look, you can use cultural products as fossils of the human mind, right? The human mind doesn't fossilize, but the products that is left from human minds, we can study its contents in the same way that paleontologist studies fossil remains. So I can connect to the mind of an ancient Greek poet and understand what he's talking about as though he's speaking today, because the software that's running his mind and mine is identical. He doesn't know what an iPhone is. He doesn't know what a podcast is, but he knows about sexual longing. He knows about paternity uncertainty. He knows about sibling rivalry. Those are the universal themes that are invariant across time and place. And so one of the things that I love about being an author is that I get to be connected to ideas with all of these immortal souls, And so it's really a beautiful thing to write and to create, and that the fact that I independently thought of something that Epictetus thought 2,000 years ago connects me with them.
Yeah, truth. It's just you developed an understanding of human beings and of human nature, and you deciphered from this and extracted some truth. And it turns out other people have done the same thing.
It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. There's a great book called the Immortality Code, and it's Brian Murarescu, he's gone through ancient Greek culture and all of the Lucidian mysteries, and looked into all of their rituals and tried to figure out what was going on. And one of the things that they've done is going over pottery and finding that there's remnants of psychedelic substances in these pottery jars. And so these wine jars, these jugs, and these pottery, they found that they were imbibing in wine that was dosed with lysergic acid. So they had different kinds of ergot and different kinds of things that would produce psychedelic states. So all of these, when people would go there to learn, and when people would go to have these ritualistic experiences, they were tripping.
Right.
And this is the birthplace of democracy. This is the birthplace of a lot of these thinkers, these great thinkers of that age. And of course, Roman emperors forbade it, and they outlawed it, and in the book they sort of detail how it migrated to other countries, and you can find the same remnants in the pottery in these other countries, and you can literally you can track the path of their escape from these areas where they were more restrictive and trying these ritualistic experiences in other places. But it's the Immortality Key or Code. The Immortality Key. It's an amazing book. Really, really. And Brian was on the podcast, and because of him being on the podcast, Harvard has opened up a field of study.
Wow.
In that particular area where they're looking at psychedelic substance use in ancient Greece, because it's irrefutable now. Because of the residue, they now have scientific evidence. They have residue that shows that they were most certainly flavoring their wine with this stuff. That's another thing that I didn't know. I always thought wine was wine. It was fermented fruit. It's not. Their wine, they would always add things to it. They constantly added stuff to their wine. Their wine was never just wine. Their wine was most of the time wine with other things, and oftentimes psychedelic substances like those got mixed in with the wine.
So earlier you said that everything that I do out of love. I stop enjoying it.
Yeah.
I won't do it. So in the rest of your good life, I talk about the two decisions that you make in your life that are most likely to impart great happiness or great misery on you. Number one, choosing the right spouse. Number two, choosing the right job or profession, because most of your waking time is going to be spent either with your family or your job. And if either or both of those impart you great happiness, you're well on your way to living a happy life.
Yeah.
And so in your case, you picked off the job, and you probably lived the most desired life in terms of the pursuit that most people desire being yours, right? Because you're completely free. You're not bound to anyone. You do exactly what you want when you want, right? So what would be, if it came to choosing the right spouse? You've been married for a long time, so rather.
Have you met my wife before?
I've never met her.
Oh, she's here. She'll be here in a little bit.
Oh, that'd be
Yeah,
great. I'd
she'll
love
be here.
it. Right.
We have a gym next to us.
So what would be the things that you would advise people? I want to see if it jives with some of the things that I say in the book. The things that, you should look for the optimal mate. Of course, there is no guaranteed recipe, but do you have some life lessons as to how someone should choose their optimal wife or so on?
You have to be someone who is a good person to want. That's a big one. There's a lot of people that want this amazing spouse. They want an amazing husband. They want an amazing wife, but they're not amazing.
Right.
Like, who the fuck are you to get that person? Like,
Yeah.
you have to be. I don't mean worthy as in a human being. I mean worthy in your behavior, your tenacity, your discipline, your passion.
Yeah.
You have to be fun to be around. You have to be a giver. You have to be someone who enjoys being around you.
Right.
So like when you're on a date with that person, when you first meet them, they like you. They have
Yeah.
fun. You like them.
Yeah.
It's mutually beneficial. Like everybody wants to be desired, but nobody wants to be compatible.
Right.
Nobody wants to be generous. Those are not things that people aspire to. People don't aspire to being cordial. They don't aspire to being warm and friendly and loving and humorous. But that's what people like.
Right.
Everybody wants to be the baller at the club with the champagne, the big gold chain.
Can I help you?
But that's just fucking bullshit. That's what you see from the outside.
Right.
You want to be the person who's on stage where everybody cheers when they see your face. That's on the outside. What you want to be is someone who people like, genuinely.
Yeah.
Like as a person, not the image of you, but who you fucking really are.
Right.
They have to know you. So if you don't know yourself, and if you're not honest with yourself in terms of like your discipline, your work ethic, the way you treat your friends, the way you treat strangers, the way you are, your personality. If you're not working on that, you're never going to attract a valuable mate.
Right.
You're never going to attract someone who's desirable, someone who you want to be around. Why would they want to be around with you? There's people out there that are working harder than you. There's people out there that are nicer than you. There's people out there that are more friendly than you. That's attractive. If a woman's on a date with a man and the man's rude to the waitress,
I was going to say exactly that as a test.
oh my God, or the man talks badly about his ex-girlfriend or his ex-wife, she's going to go, what are you going to say about me?
Yeah.
What are you going to, you're not even treating me nice.
I agree with everything that you said. One time, I told you I always go for long walks with my wife to get to the cafe in the morning. And so one day we were stopped by one of my daughter's friend's father who came up to us. He's a photographer, and he said, we stopped by to say hello. And he said, do you mind if I ask you a question, Gad? I said, sure. He goes, how do you do it? I said, Do what? What are you asking? He goes, every single day I see you walking on this thing, you're arm in arm with your wife, and you're kind of lost in conversation. You're both very serene and happy. I said, well, I don't have a recipe. I really just enjoy her company. She's my best friend. It sounds cliche-ish, but that's really what it is. I'd rather be with my wife more than anyone else on most days that I exist. Now, I don't know if there's a recipe to find that person, but if you do find that person, hang on tight. So that's one.
Well, you have to know who you are.
Yeah, very true.
If you don't know who you are, you won't know who they are. And if you're full of shit.
And by the way, the ancient Greeks already beat you to that. Know thyself, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the stuff you're
Yes.
saying, they already said it.
Yeah, they knew
to
it.
our point.
Yeah.
The second thing, if I'm going to get more scientific, it turns out that for long-term marital success, there are two competing maxims: birds of a feather flock together, or opposites attract. Opposites attract is great for short-term mating, right? I tend to be, extroverted. You are introverted. Maybe that complements each other for a little sexual dalliance behind the bushes. But on the other hand, for long-term marital success, you want assortative mating, the birds of a feather flock together. On which traits? On shared values.
Right. Right.
So if you don't have that in common, the stats of you likely divorcing shoots through the roof.
Like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Bingo.
Johnny's a sweetheart of a guy.
But is that
generous
true?
to
Is
a
he
fault.
really?
Oh, yeah, he is. Yeah, he's a sweetheart of a guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I've talked to him, and he's very good friends with one of my very good friends, my friend Doug Stanhope. He's a sweetheart of a guy, and that's part of the problem. And he was in a loving relationship before her and had a child and the whole deal. But it's the partying. That's probably what they shared in common. But what they didn't share in common was truth and honesty. And Johnny's pretty honest. And that other
I didn't know
lady-
that he was so poetic and
Yes.
all
See,
that.
people are gonna get the chance to see him.
Yeah.
He's an interesting guy, and she's not. Well, she's interesting. Like from if I was a psychologist and I was studying her, like for you, it must be interesting.
Right,
Because
exactly.
I mean, she's so full of shit that she says things on the stand that are directly refuted by previous things that she said,
Right.
including that she never hit him. Like she's fucking on. Not only that, the two of them are recording each other. Like how crazy are the both of them? They're both. That's when they have in common. Neither one of them trusted each other, so they were fucking recording their conversations like insane people.
Yeah. You were mentioning earlier about the test with the if someone treats the waiter or waitress bad poorly.
Yes.
Do you remember in Bronx Tale the door
Yes.
test?
Yes.
Isn't that unbelievably
Yeah.
wise?
Yeah, it is wise. But how crazy is it back then? Like, there was no automatic doors.
Exactly.
You had to use a key.
By the way, one of my favorite movies of all time.
It's a great movie. It's
Yeah.
a great movie. Yeah. That is a test. Like you want people that care. Like people that don't care about other people. That's only a virtue if no one cares about anyone and you're protecting yourself from pain. Right? And so there are a lot of people out there that say that I don't give a fuck about anybody else. I'm going to get my thing. Like that's silly.
Right.
You're missing the objective point. The objective point is community.
Yeah.
The objective point is camaraderie, love, friendship, relationships, whatever. It's like it's a mutually beneficial thing to be caring and to be kind and it feels good to be nice to people. It really genuinely does.
Right.
It's actually selfish to be generous and kind and nice.
Because,
it really is.
Because
it feels
you
good.
benefit.
Yeah, you benefit, and people don't think about it that way. And it's not why you should do it. You should do it because it makes other people feel good, but that does make you feel good. It really does. It's like really, like that's one of the secrets to my happiness. I have a lot of really good friends, and I'm really close to them.
Right.
And like I love them, and I tell them I love them. I tell my guy friends I love them all the time. And I have a lot of friends, and these friends that I have, a lot of them I've known for decades, and we've had a lot of fun together. And we have kindness and generosity, but also we hold each other accountable, and we're also very honest. And when they're not honest, I'm like, come on, fuckface, I know you're full of shit.
Do you because of your fame and so on? Are you not defensive, but are you guarded in bringing new people into your inner circle, always wondering if there is a ulterior motive to why this person? Do you have the mechanism to be able to adjudicate that? Because a lot of people are trying to be friends with Joe Rogan, and I need to make sure that you're not a pretender, a user, and someone who's being instrumental in your.
You can find out pretty easy.
Okay.
bullshitters are not good at it. No
Right.
one's good. I mean, there's some genuine sociopaths and wind up being cult leaders and shit like that. But yeah, eventually you see it. Eventually you see it. Just
Yeah.
don't let them all the way in. But you get it by just the way they talk. When you're full of shit, one of the things about being a liar or being someone who is dishonest or is you're acting like you're someone who you're not, is you're not good at recognizing that in other people.
Right.
And you're not reading how the other people are seeing you, so you think you're conning people when you're not. This is the Amber Heard thing.
Yeah.
Like, if she was an honest person, just the way she's talking and acting, like the fake crying, it would be so brutal.
But it's so funny because I listened to, I think it was maybe Megyn Kelly's podcast, where it seemed as though everybody had bought into, her act. That, no way, even though she's an actress, could she ever fake those emotions. Whereas I watched that little snippet and it struck me as inauthentic. So what is
Who
it
thought
that
it was authentic?
I can't remember who her
Megyn
guest
Kelly
was.
was
No.
saying?
I think there was a guest on her show.
Oh, the guest
they were
must have been a hardcore woman feminist that doesn't believe
But do you
ever
think?
that the
Do you think
the
that's the
man
only
is the
thing?
victim.
Do you think that that's the only thing that can assort people into seeing the inauthenticity versus not seeing it?
Yeah, I think she has. If someone doesn't recognize the inauthenticity of that woman on trial, it's because they don't want
They
to.
can't read people. Yeah.
Well, they either can't read people or they are so biased that they're looking for, like when people were talking about Joe Biden, like Joe Biden's State of the Union address
Or was
was
Mark Garagos?
What about
Was
Mark
a friend.
Garagos?
I think that was the guest on Megyn Kelly, where he was saying you can't fake those kinds of raw emotions.
That's hilarious. Isn't he a lawyer though?
And he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry,
of course-
Mark. I didn't mean to call you out.
Of course you can fake that. She's not even faking it well.
Right.
What a sucker he is. I'd like to find out how many times that guy's been divorced.
Mark, I'm really sorry because I got to tell you.
Maybe he's got it like, maybe he's just saying that to be a contrarian.
I know Mark well. He lives in Southern California. He's done a lot of high-profile cases. A couple of summers ago, I was in Southern California with my family. We were very keen to go to an LAFC game, the Los Angeles Football Club.
Mm-hmm.
I reach out to Mark. I say, Mark, you got to hook me up with tickets within 2 hours. He's wired me tickets.
Wow.
So
He's a good guy.
he is a very, very good guy.
Sometimes
even though
good guys are suckers.
now, I might agree with you on one point. Doug Peterson, is that his name? The guy who killed his wife? Or Dennis Peterson? The guy who killed his pregnant wife who was on death row in California. He represented him. I'm
Which
going
one?
to...
I don't remember what that guy why, what was the circumstances of him killing him?
There was a guy who was dating, having an extramarital affair, so his
Is that in
pregnant...
Colorado?
No, it was in Modesto, California. He
God,
was
there's
on...
a few of those cases, aren't there?
Can we
That's
get
what's so-
Jamie to pick... Scott Peterson.
Okay, I remember that one, yeah.
Well, I think Garagos represented him, or maybe during the appeal process. And I've always wondered whether when lawyers do that, they have to know the truth.
Yeah, you have to know, but it's your job to defend them. That's what's the darkest thing about your job. When you're a defense attorney, particularly, you have to defend someone who very well might have killed their pregnant wife.
But technically speaking, if that client were to say to you, I admit to you in private that I've done it,
Yeah.
do you, or do you have to go under the...
No, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I mean, I think you could probably recruit. Could you recruit? What happens when someone knows that their client is guilty? That's a very good question.
Yeah, I mean, so my feeling is, as long, and I don't know, I'm not a lawyer either, but I don't think they can simply say, I did it and you're defending me. So I just kind of put my hand and I go, la la la, don't ever say it. And I'm presuming that everything you're telling me is truthful.
Yeah. You know what's scary is the opposite. When prosecutors know that you're innocent and they're still trying to get you. That's real.
So-
I mean, that's Kamala Harris, by the way.
And
Yeah.
I despise that woman, and I'm Canadian. I have no.
Yeah.
By the way, her high school, I played soccer from my high school against her high school when she was at that school in Montreal. Because I don't know if you know, she was from Montreal.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
She
that.
grew up in Montreal. So we lived very close to one another.
Did she cheat at soccer too?
She probably I didn't play against her. I played on. Back then, we used to have boys' team that were made up of
According
biological.
to, lawyers are supposed to represent someone even if they think they're guilty.
Okay. But if
Zealously.
they think they're
But
guilty,
what
or
if
they know?
what if the
I believe it's the same.
oh, it's the same thing.
Defense lawyers are ethically bound to zealously represent all clients, including those they believe will justly be found guilty, as well as those they believe are factually innocent. Strenuous defense is necessary to protect the innocent and to ensure that judges and citizens have the ultimate power to decide who's guilty of a crime. So the problem with that is then it becomes like an intellectual exercise for the person who's the lawyer to defend someone who they know is guilty against an inferior
Right.
prosecuting attorney
Right.
that they know is kind of a schlub and that they could sneak by, and they've done that in the past
Yeah.
with, expensive suits and big words and
I mean,
convincing arguments.
the mafia lawyers surely don't
Sure.
think that those guys are in construction, really. So they
Not only do they not think it, do you remember when John Gotti was on
Yeah.
trial and he had that mob attorney who was
Yeah,
fucking
yeah, yeah.
excellent, who was built like a brick shit house?
Bruce something.
What was his name? Cutler?
Bruce Cutler?
Was that
That
his name?
sounds right. Oh, we're going to Jamie today a lot.
What was his name? He was built like a fucking
Yeah, yeah.
linebacker.
He was a
scary
Yeah, yeah.
guy because
He was a mob lawyer. He
Yeah.
looked like a mob.
Yeah,
lawyer.
look at him. What's his name? Bruce Cutler? Yeah. Look at the size of that guy. I mean, he looks like the guy would break your fucking head with a bat. Look at him. Look at him. Big, bald, gorilla-looking dude. Like he'd smash your fucking face in. That looks like a mob attorney.
Yeah.
Like that's a guy that was under no illusion that John Gotti was innocent. And he was really good at getting him out. That's why they called him the Teflon Don. He
Exactly.
kept getting him out.
Yeah. By the way, you mentioned earlier how horrific it is when you prosecute someone that you know is
Yeah.
innocent. Of all the guests I've had on my show, probably the one that will personally love it the most is I had a guy who spent 29 years in prison for a murder which he was eventually exonerated of. And I included him in my latest book because I'm talking again about the recipe for a good life. And what amazed me about this guy is how non-filled with anger and hatred and a sense of retribution he had. And so I basically coined him the new Buddha. Because I was trying to put myself in his position. If you stole from me 29 years of my existence, and he was so poised and so truly like as if he's a saint. And I thought, you're a much better man than I am, because if I got out after you've stolen 29 years from me, I think I would want to burn the world down, because I would be so,
Third of your life,
and right, and
if you're lucky.
yeah, so you might. I'll send you the link if you ever have time. You should watch it, because this guy is the model by how we should live life, without having anything in our heart. I mean, how forgiving he was is really incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's a sneaky system. I've had Josh Dubin on. He's an ambassador for the Innocence Project. He's a good friend of mine. I've had him on multiple times, and through this podcast, several people have actually been let out of jail because of the arguments he made in this podcast and cases reopened and people examining things. And
Is there no end to your influence?
well, it's his influence. I mean, I'm giving him the portal, but he's so selfless in his work and what he does to try to exonerate innocent people. And, we've had fucking tear-filled conversations about this because he's gotten people out that, were immigrants, couldn't speak English well, or unfairly accused, and the prosecutors knew that this person was innocent, and they don't give a fuck. Once they have someone in the game, they're trying to win.
Right.
Like once the game is going on, they don't say, "Hey, Your Honor, I think we're wrong. I think this guy's innocent, and I'm going to not try to prosecute him. And even though we're in court right now, I want to say that I'm on his side." No one does that.
Ego and careerism
Yes.
over truth. But so on the judicial point, are you for or against that?
If people were honest 100% of the time, I would be for the death penalty. People are not honest. And if you know what I know about the whole process of trying someone and convicting someone unfairly about the way they withhold evidence, like we were talking about with Kamala Harris, including genetic evidence. Like they try to withhold evidence that would exonerate innocent people. If I didn't know that, I'd be for the death penalty.
So philosophically,
know.
you're not against it.
I am for killing people who rape children. I'm
I was
for
gonna say
killing people who murder your family, killing people who do horrible things. I'm all for removing dangerous people that are detrimental to society. The problem is you don't know. You don't know because we have a corrupt system. And not only do we have a corrupt system, but we have people that have existed inside this corrupt system for decades, and they're really fucking good at it.
So how about we do it very simply? If I'm going to set the criterion, if I find your DNA in or on the bodies of...
But you can't know because someone could plant that. Even then, it becomes sketchy. Because like people have planted DNA evidence on innocent people. They've taken someone's innocent DNA, an innocent person's DNA, and planted it on a body in order to, to make it look like they committed a crime. That's possible.
So then, practically speaking, since there is no way to render that probability of malfeasance to zero, then practically you would never be for the death penalty.
I think it's so hard to know whether or not someone who is saying they're innocent, unless there's overwhelming evidence, unless you have like their family members and all these people saying like Jeffrey Dahmer, right, is a good example. Like, fucking monster. The guy was a monster, clearly. There's a lot of cases of those. Ted Bundy. There's a lot of cases of those where people were fucking monsters. That makes sense. Like, remove them from society. But what about people that are unfairly executed? Unfairly convicted and then executed for crimes they didn't commit? That happens all the time.
So I think we can set the set of criteria that you must reach so that you would feel sufficiently convinced that it has assuaged the possibility that someone is planting. So
it has to be a Richard Ramirez type situation. It has to be someone.
The Night Stalker.
Yeah, there's so many people that are good people that get fucking railroaded, and they wind up in jail, and they have poor representation, and maybe they can't read, or maybe they get fucked, and then they wind up getting executed, and the killer's loose and free. And that happens. That happens all the time. I don't know what percentage. Let's ask this. What do you think? I don't even know the statistics. What percentage of people who are executed turn up to actually be innocent?
I'm going to say no more than 5%, which is a pretty high number.
Pretty high number.
But
I would say you're probably right.
Yeah.
It's probably less than that. I would say it's probably less than 5%, but that's enough, man.
That's enough. Yeah.
That's a lot. You got 100 people, 5 of them you're going to murder.
But that's because the criteria.
4%. See, we're
God
close.
damn.
Give me some knuckles, brother.
God damn.
Yeah, nailed it. Can I see that statistic, the way they say it? It says the study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science determined that at least 4%
I love that.
of people on the death penalty, death row, were and are likely innocent.
Have been executed.
Oh, people have no doubt that some innocent people have been executed.
That's a different sentence.
Yeah, but it's okay. It's the same thing. It says people on death row.
Yeah.
Or that have been convicted to the death penalty.
Yeah, but look, there have been cases of death penalty where it's based on eyewitness testimony. We know how unreliable that is.
It's terrible.
So you and I can set up the framework so that our exacting standards, so that nobody falls under 4%, could be met.
Yeah.
What I don't like is when you have people who say, under no conditions and no possible states of the world is it ever appropriate nor moral to kill someone. And I simply don't agree that that's part of our... Yeah.
Like Hitler? You tell me you wouldn't want to execute Hitler?
Exactly.
It's crazy.
No, but
there's people that are egregious, right? There's people that their cases are so horrific that there's a moral imperative to remove them from the population.
Exactly right. And I think the example that you gave with the children is that's where I would be.
You know, there's a story, there's a UFC fighter who's one of the all-time greats, Cain Velasquez, and he's in jail now because there was a man who was working at the preschool who molested his 4-year-old 100 times or more. Like, they don't know how many times.
By the way, that number, before you go on, that number is an actual stat, which I may have mentioned on the show before, that the average pedophile, when they're caught, has up to 100 prior molestation counted.
Well, this guy got out on bail and was under house arrest, and Cain Velasquez found out and chased him down in his car, shot at him in the car, wound up shooting his father, who was driving the car. His father, who, by the way, was running the nursing home, so his father likely knew that his son was a monster. Shot him in the abdomen and in the arm, and shot him through the door of the car, shooting out the door of the car. Cain's in jail with no bail, no possibility of bail, and he's being tried for murder, or tried for attempted murder. And, that's a situation where if that guy seems to be guilty, I would have no problem with that guy getting the death penalty. Wow. That guy's ruining people's lives.
Unbelievable.
Ruining a small child. If you found out your boy had been sexually molested fucking 100 times by some monster.
It's the biggest nightmare.
It's the scariest thing ever. And what Cain Velasquez did is what every person says they would do if someone came after their child. I mean, that he actually went out and did it.
So I've had not heated exchanges with my wife, but I always come to the following approach in parenting. I don't put my children, who are now a bit older, they're 13 and 10, but growing up, I never put my children in any situation where they could ever be molested, meaning if there is a man in any situation, my children are never going to be alone with him. Now, my wife would argue, aren't you being a bit too punitive in presuming that there's a pedophile hanging around every corner? I say, well, I'm not willing to take, so the precautionary principle, I'm not willing to take the chance that that person who really seems nice, that neighbor, or the teenage son of their friend, or anybody could be that guy. He doesn't have horns. I can't tell what he looks like. Therefore, there was never any sleepovers. There was never sleepaway camp. There was no. So I can't understand. Not that I'm blaming this gentleman who saw it, but why is it that he was in a nursery that was run by a father and there was a male present? That makes no sense to me. I
don't know how it worked. I don't know the story. I see your perspective. There's a lot of people that run nursing homes that are adult males that are great people. It's a horrible, horrible situation. But I just think the problem is we can't read minds.
Yeah.
Until we can determine ultimate truth, the pure, undeniable truth from a person. They can sit you down and say, Mr. Savvy, please put your hands on this thing and tell us what you did and what you didn't do. And until we can do that, and by the way, people, here's the thing. People say, just give them a polygraph test. Let me tell you something. Sociopaths they pass polygraph tests all the fucking time. Real sociopaths can sit there and lie to your fucking face, and it doesn't change their heart rate at all. Liars, real good liars, people who have gotten real fucking good at lying. They've been lying their whole life. They've just been making up shit and lying about this and lying about that, covering their tracks. They don't even think they're lying. They're fucking crazy.
And there's, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the show, there's a evolutionary biologist by the name of Robert Trivers who's still alive. Some have said he's arguably the biggest evolutionary biologist since Darwin. He's now in his late 70s. So he developed the theory of the evolution of self-deception. Why is it that we are so good at self-deceiving? And the argument is that if I'm trying to manipulate you, Joe, when I lie to you in manipulative intent, I have micro-cues that signal that I might be lying. But if I first lie to myself so that I can shut off those signals, it becomes impossible for you to read the manipulative intent in me. Well, what psychopaths have innately built within them is the natural ability to have those cues shut off. And so the polygraph test can't pick it up precisely because they're not emitting those signals. But if you and I tell a fib, it's going to create a physiological arousal state, and then you're going to pick it up in the machine.
Yeah, it's not effective. That's why it's not applicable in court. And they need to come up with one. I mean, that's the only way we're ever going to really know. And until then, there's unfortunately a lot of people that are in bad circumstances. They have poor representation. They get framed. Something happens, and then they wind up on death row. So until then, it's very hard to support the death sentence.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't not support it in cases of pure guilt. Like we know, it's undeniable.
Right.
But there's a lot of places where people thought someone was absolutely guilty and it turned out not to be the case.
Sure.
And then, imagine living with that. Imagine being a prosecuting attorney and you railroaded someone and sent them down the river, put them on death row, and then had them killed, and then it turns out that they were innocent. Like, man, good luck in hell. Good luck in hell. There's a special place in hell for people like that.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Prior to eventually settling on consumer psychology and evolution psychology, I had toyed with the idea of going into criminal psychology. I had always been fascinated with the serial killers and so on. And I decided, I think, rightly against it because I thought that I might have had the intellectual interest, but my personality would have been severely damaged by being exposed to darkness and evil.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the reasons why I didn't go into clinical psychology, unlike, say, Jordan Peterson, a good friend of both of us. I'm empathetic that I think I could have been an effective therapist, but I think it would have been very detrimental to my personhood because I wouldn't have been able to create the demarcation between listening to what was done to you when you were a child and then, oh, now it's 5 o'clock, let me go and party with my family because all is good. And so I think I would have probably blown my brains. And so I think in retrospect, even though I've always been interested in forensic psychiatry and clinical psychology and criminal, I picked more uplifting fields of human behavior to study.
I think you picked wisely. I think you're absolutely accurate. I think that same problem applies to police officers. I have many friends that are either former or current police officers, and they tell me the horrific things that they've seen. They've had to go to a home where a father just murdered the wife in front of the children and that kind of shit, or murdered the child, or they've seen so many horrific things, and then they come home to their own children, and there's a high rate of suicide among police officers, and I think it's horrible.
And imagine that we now make them turn out to be diabolical via the hashtag defund the police. So of course they are bad cops, but the reality is we should be treating them with the respect they're deserving of, because most of us would not be lining up to do their job. They don't get paid enough for it, and yet we do hashtag defund the police. It's grotesque.
Well, it falls in line with these people that live in this delusional world where you don't need law enforcement, you don't need laws, and you're just going to be good people. And then you get LA, where you get rampant, out-of-control crime, and people just get released on bail for murder. They're just out roaming around the streets.
And if you steal less than $9.50, it's not a felony.
I mean, how many fucking Walmarts have to close down? Walgreens have to close down in San Francisco. Those drugstores where they just walk in, just start shoveling things into a bag and walk out, and no one does anything about it.
But again, that shows you that having a full understanding of human nature has downstream bad effects, right? So if you think that by definition, if you're a criminal, it is never due to your own personal agency, but that the culprit is really the society that caused you to become a victim, then why should I be punitive, right? And therefore, I shouldn't incarcerate you. It's wrong. I am double penalizing you. First, the world made you into the rapist. Otherwise, you're a beautiful, lovely human being. And now I'm going to put you in prison. Why don't I instead, find a way to help you out of this thing? So it's a wrong understanding of human nature that causes all of these insane woke policies.
It is a wrong understanding of human nature, but there is a reality to people that are fucked by the world. There's certain people that, through no fault of their own, they were born into a horrible circumstance. They have terrible parents. They live in a terrible neighborhood. There's crime and drugs, and that's all they know, and that's all they've ever known. And they grew up that way, and they're probably the victim of abuse, whether it's physical abuse or sexual abuse and violence. They've had this their whole life. They've been in and out of penal institutions. These people are fucked. And the problem is, there's no rehabilitation mechanism that's involved. The friends that I've had that have gone to jail, out of jail, they're like, you're not getting rehabilitated in there. If anything, you get turned into a harder criminal. You get taught how to do crimes better, and you get to talk to people about how they get caught and how they're going to not get caught the second time when they get out. I don't know what the solution is. I would imagine that we're going to have a much more comprehensive understanding of what it takes to program a mind and what it takes to deprogram a mind, and what techniques, what substances are involved in that can be effectively given to people. Because we know that there's some substances that aid tremendously in alleviating people from whether it's alcoholism or any kind of addiction issues, like this ibogaine. There's a bunch of different things that people can do. A lot of people that have done psilocybin, John Hopkins studies have shown tremendous benefits in quitting detrimental behavior, whether it's cigarettes or things like that, gambling, drug addiction. I think there's
Just aging reduces your criminality. Nothing for nothing else, right? Just your drop in testosterone is a huge predictor of
especially
the,
violence. Yeah.
just wait out the curve and you'll become less violent.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, how do we let someone become more wise while still protecting everyone else from that person's impulses and urges, especially if that person did grow up in a violent household where they were beaten and everyone in the neighborhood sucks, and just there's a lot of people like that. It's not like that's the real inequality. The real inequality is the way children are raised. The real inequality is what are you exposed to, even in the womb. You know, they've done studies that show that people that are that women that are pregnant, and notice I said women that are pregnant, because guess what? Men can get pregnant.
Wow. That was a bold statement.
I'm saying, while women are pregnant, that if that woman is exposed to violence, that her higher cortisol rates in her body and the stress in her body, the adrenaline, all these effects will actually make the child more inclined towards violent activity, because the kid is thinking he's got to be born into a world that's crazy and he's got to protect himself. So he's got a shorter attention.
But then this kind of
shorter
causal argument could be applied ad infinitum, right?
Yes.
I mean, at some point, you have to stand up and say, I have personal agency. Look, I grew up in the most violent environment possible.
Right.
It's called the Lebanese Civil War. I did not rob anybody. I did not attack anybody. I did not rape anybody.
But you also grew up with good parents.
Fair enough. I get it. We do have, but there are many, many people who've grown up with very, very bad parents, and they didn't end up killing.
That's true.
Right? So I get the argument of the mitigating factors, and I'm empathetic enough to understand it, but it never justifies you. At any moment in life, you have a bifurcation in the road, and you can go right or you can go left. If you make the wrong choice, you pay the price.
I think that's true. I think you're right, but I think we need to find some way to reach people and let them know this in a way that, like, there's a lot of people that don't have any role models of people that are striving through all this chaos and doing the right thing. All their people that they're around, people imitate their atmosphere. If everyone in your atmosphere is committing crimes, and there are places in this country and certainly places in the world where that's the case, where you live in a horrific environment and everyone around you is involved in terrible activities.
Have you seen this study? I can't cite it off the top of my head, but that the number one predictor in a home that can serve as a predictor of how well your children will do is how many books are in the home.
Really?
So imagine it'd be great if
Well, my kids are going to kill it because I got a lot of books.
they got a lot of books from guests that come on your show, and then books you throw. Exactly. I'm going to test you on this book next time. What did I say in chapter 7? No, but seriously, so you're exactly right. Having loving parents, Larry Elder, whom I think often talks about that the number one predictor.
He's the blackface for white supremacy.
He is the blackface.
I saw that in LA Times. They wouldn't lie.
Exactly.
Say a child growing up in a home with 80 books will have a greater literacy and numeracy in adulthood. Home library can promote reading.
So basically, just the other thing that I think in terms of parenting that is fantastic is if you treat your children with the dignity that they are deserving of. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't baby my children. Even when they were 5 or 6 or 7, I speak to them as though they have a personhood. I listen to them. I explain the concept of libertarianism to my son, who was 9 last year, and we were walking and I was explaining, you know why? Because I was pissed off that a cop was standing giving out jaywalking tickets to people who were crossing the street when I'm perfectly capable as a 57-year-old man to know if there's an incoming coming car for me to make. But apparently, no, the nanny state has to say when I should cross. And so that led to a discussion of libertarianism. Well, my giving him the dignity of me speaking to him in a way that I explained this to him, that's what good parenting is, right? And I don't mean to be, tooting my own horn,
Yeah.
but it's that you treat your children with the respect that they have a functioning brain. Treat them with dignity. And I think that could hopefully go a long way towards solving some of this criminality, maybe.
Well, your children are very lucky that they have you as a dad.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that have shithead dads.
Yeah.
And, and the other thing is exposure to drug addiction. I mean, and then losing that sort of the fear of that at a very early age.
Yeah.
And everyone's doing drugs around you, and it's a common thing. It's like
You didn't have a dad growing up, right? Is that,
no,
yeah.
no. My parents. I have a stepdad. But my parents divorced when I was 5 years old.
Did you stay in touch later with your
No.
biological father?
No, I haven't talked to him since then. Yeah.
Do you even know if he's alive?
Yeah, he's alive. Yeah.
Oh, that's rough.
Rough on him.
Yeah.
It
Has he
doesn't
ever
bother me.
tried to reach you?
No. That's what's even more crazy.
Yeah.
His kids have. He has other kids. They tried years ago, but I'm like, listen.
Do you think they reached out? Forgive me for asking,
don't know.
because you're the Joe Rogan guy, or
That's how they knew.
Okay.
Yeah. We have the same name. He and my dad and I.
yeah.
His name is Joe Rogan too.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's his punishment.
That's his punishment. He could have been with the son Joe Rogan, and yeah.
Probably not though. Probably wouldn't have been me. I probably would have been a shithead if I kept him as a dad. It's one of those things where it's like you always wonder, like, that the curse of having that happen to me at an early age. It gave me an independence and a determination. Like, I had determination that other kids didn't have. I had like
I'm gonna show the world.
I had that, but I also had no one's coming to help me.
Hmm.
There's no dad that's going to clean up my mess. There's no dad that's going to be there to hold my hand and comfort me. And I had to do it all myself in a lot of ways. And, my stepdad's a very good guy, and my mom's a wonderful lady. It's not, they didn't do bad, but there's something about not having your biological father in your life and knowing that he's out there and that he's not even reaching out to you. I can't imagine that. I mean, I love my children so much.
I won't say much, but believe me, I share a similar reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And yesterday I was speaking at UT Austin, I was asked by a young man, how do you deal with adversity? I said, well, for better or worse, I have the temperament that if you try to hurt me or if I faced stressors in life, I want to then shove it up your ass and succeed even more.
Yeah.
So the more you throw at me, not unlike what happened with you, the more I'm irreverent to that stressor and I want to defeat it. And
Yeah.
So I hear you, brother.
It's taken me a while to calm myself, though, because of it. It took into my, probably into my late 20s and to really calm myself, because there was part of me that also felt angry that he wasn't around, and also part of me that didn't feel in any way like I was safe.
Right.
Like, you don't have anybody, like, when you're a child, you don't feel like anybody's looking out for you. It's like a weird way to grow up. You grow up in this way where you feel like, plus I was a latchkey kid, they just let me out of the house when I was little. And you grow up that way, you recognize a lot more danger than other people
Yeah.
do. Which is also why I moved here so quickly. Like, I moved to Texas in May of 2020. I started looking at the house. It was like, fuck you. When they said 2 weeks to flatten the curve, I go, okay, flatten the curve. And then I started looking at statistics. Then a few of mine got COVID and got over it really easily. And I'm like, what is going on? And then it was months later. I was like, what happened to a few weeks? And then it was like more restrictions. And I was like, what's going on? And then I came out here to Texas, and everybody's no masks and just hanging out. I was like,
I
how
belong
come-
here.
What the fuck is going on? Like, yeah, you should take care of yourself. Yeah, you should be healthy. Yeah, you shouldn't do anything unwise. Yeah, it's not good to get COVID, but it seems like it's a respiratory disease, and we've never been able to stop a respiratory disease from spreading, ever, in human history. Ever. And I know that, and I'm not a fucking epidemiologist. How do you not know that? How do they not know that? They do know that. And masks don't work. Fucking Fauci said masks don't work. Unless you have a fitted N95 or KN95 mask. Like they're not working. These fucking bandanas that people are wearing, this is nonsense. Like, what are we, playing games? And the thing about Texas is, like, you know, I met with the governor when I first came out here. And one of the things that he said, we want to make sure that we preserve people's freedoms. That's the same thing Ron DeSantis said. I met him recently, too.
Yeah.
He said, we preserve people's freedoms here.
I spoke at an event by Hillsdale College. I don't know if you know the school. They're kind of a college that positions itself as kind of the premier anti-woke college. And they had invited me to speak in Florida at an event in Naples. And so I was the plenary speaker on whatever it was, on Thursday. The Wednesday event was DeSantis was there. And so I didn't get to meet him personally, but I was at this thing. And he seemed like pretty legit. What do you think?
I think he's legit. You know, there's people that don't agree with some of the things that he says because, you know, they're ideologically opposed to him because they're on the left. But you don't have a left or a right.
Right.
Which would be way better for all people to just engage with individual ideas individually. Engage them independently. Look at how do you feel about education? I think it's critical. It's very important.
Yeah.
How do you feel about indoctrination by people that are educators? I don't like that at all. They're just two very different things. And if you want to tell me that they're the same thing, I say fuck you. Because they're not. Because there's a lot of fucking crazy people that want to be teachers. Someone said to me that, or read this, not all, that term groomer, a lot of people don't like that term online. They're very upset. But they're real. There are groomers. You don't like it? Do you not like it because you don't want children to be groomed? Or do you not like it because it's a pejorative that's used against the left? Which is, I think, more likely. But here's what's more important. Not have people groom your fucking kids. That's what's more important than you getting uncomfortable with this word because it's used by people on the right. Like, I saw someone, as an argument, someone who I think is an intelligent person, say that there should be a block against using the word groomers. No, there should be no groomers. How about that? And this is what they wrote. They said, not all teachers are groomers, but a lot of groomers are teachers.
There you go.
And that's real.
Yeah.
That's a real fucking problem. I mean, constantly teachers are getting arrested for exposing themselves to children, for masturbating in front of children, for sending nude pictures in front of children. Every couple days there's a new one that pops up in the news. And how many of those people haven't been caught yet? And how many of those people are out there? And how many of those people are doing it under the guise of I'm an LGBTQ educator? And
I'm keeping a tally of the amount of hate mail that you're going to be getting.
Well, good luck. I don't read it. There's people that are good people in all walks of life. Trans people, gay people, straight people, bisexual, whatever the fuck you are. There's good people in all walks of life. There's also pieces of shit that will use those labels in order to get closer to groups of people and indoctrinate them for their own sexual pleasure. And that's real.
So you don't like kindergarten teachers talking about gender identity?
Well, I think it's important, and I think everyone should know it. I think like that's why that whole what they were calling the "Don't Say Gay" bill in Florida was so infuriating.
Yeah.
Like when you're saying that you oppose any sort of legislation that prevents people from talking about sex and gender identity and sexual orientation with people that are first grade through third grade. You oppose anything that restricts that. I go, okay. Who are you talking about? Because if this is open-ended, I've had some fucking idiots for teachers when I grew up. Can you imagine if those fucking idiots were trying to convince your child that they should be homosexual or that they should even be straight? Imagine if you have a kid that's gay.
Never mind convincing. How about just don't address, don't talk about this issue?
That's my point. My point is, imagine if you have a gay child and you have a fucking teacher that's trying to indoctrinate your child into the world of heterosexuality and convince your child that they're going to burn in hell if that child is gay. Imagine how furious you would be.
Right.
Well, it works the other way too. Right? It does. It works the other way. You should be really good to be able to talk, really good at what you do. If you want to talk to a fucking 7-year-old about gender identity and sex, and I've seen some of these people with lip rings and fucking blue hair. They clearly are ideologically bound I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the way they live their life. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them pursuing whatever sexual identity they have and living their life. But I'm saying you should not be the person that talks to children about this, especially if you're a fucking history teacher.
So
You're supposed to be teaching them
I'm
about fucking Native Americans.
So when
and
I have students in my consumer behavior class, I tell them, what age is it moral, ethical, not legal to target children through advertising? And the typical answer that we get from the academic research is that you should only target children with advertising when they know that the intent of the advertisement is to persuade them of something.
Yes.
Because once they know that, they can build the cognitive barriers against your persuasive intent.
Yes.
So from this side of our mouth, we tell companies you can't sell cereals to an 11-year-old child because they're too young to protect themselves against the persuasive intent. But from this side of the mouth, we tell people, teachers, that it is when they're 7 years old or 6 years old that we should tell them about LGBTQ stuff. Those two things are inconsistent. If I can't target your child to sell them chewing gum, then I shouldn't be targeting your child with gender identity stuff.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, like, children want the praise and acceptance from adults.
Yeah.
They do. That's part of being a child, especially adult they admire, like a teacher, especially adult that has a position of power,
Yeah.
a position of influence. They're standing in front of a class, and they're 37 years old, and these kids are 8, and they're telling them about how the world works. And maybe they're doing it in a better, more attentive way than the parents do.
Yeah.
Maybe the parents aren't doing such a good job because maybe the parents are fucking tired and they work all day. I don't know. But what I do know is your cerebral cortex doesn't even fully form until you're 25 years old.
Yeah.
Your frontal lobe, your ability to be a fully, like, realistically, you shouldn't be able to make any decisions till you're 25. Like, realistically. Right? But
That's a
obviously you
high
can't
standard,
do that.
yeah.
It is. It's a high standard. But there's so much that you can convince a child of. There's so much. You can convince them to join cults. You can convince them to be a suicide bomber. Why do you think they get children to wear those vests? Because you can convince a child that you're going to go to heaven and you're going to be with Allah if you put on a suicide bombing vest when you're fucking 10 years old. There's a reason why they do that, and they don't go to 50-year-old guys with PhDs, right? Because that guy would be like, wait, how many virgins do I get? Why do I even want a virgin? What the fuck are you saying? Can you show me this? How do I know that?
I feel as though
God
you're
said
preparing the next bit for your show.
No, we're at a very strange place in this country where we're so ideologically bound and we're so connected to our tribe that we ignore all the signs that both sides are doing something wrong. Both sides. You know, you were speaking about Dave Rubin, and there's one thing that I noticed recently that was kind of very disturbing. You know, Dave is now he's essentially a right-wing guy, right? He used to be a left-wing guy. He used to be with the Young Turks. Now he's a right-wing guy. Dave and his husband adopted children, or
surrogacy, yeah.
Surrogate. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so they use their sperm, they created children,
Yeah.
right? And then I was watching these fucking vicious, right-wing, ideologically captured people who were talking about how horrible they were and about this is rent-a-womb, and they were talking about how it's satanic and all this like sick shit.
Wow.
And just shitting all over him and his husband for I guess there's 2 children.
There's 2 different stuff.
And I'm watching this and I'm like, man, imagine being that dude and you go over to that side and you think, well, the right wing accepts me, they love me, and it's kind of a cool thing because I'm a gay guy, but I'm also conservative now and I've been red-pilled, and then you
Boom.
try to express a little bit about your own personal life, and these hateful assholes are coming after you, and he just wants to be a loving father. Wants to be a loving father with his husband.
And that basically speaks to the point that I made in chapter 1 of the first time, where I say, while I will be focusing on ideas pathogens of the left, because the ecosystem that I have in academia, so therefore all the bad ideas stem from leftist professors, this doesn't mean that I'm implying that the right cannot be parasitized by bad ideas as well. So the fact that I don't focus on the right doesn't mean that I am implicitly saying I support the right and not the left. academia is run by leftists, therefore they're the ones who originate and spawn all the bullshit ideas that I discussed in the book. So you're exactly right. The political aisle that you lay on is not going to predict whether you can be parasitized.
Yeah, it's
But-
not.
Yeah,
There's plenty of really shitty right-wing ideas too,
exactly.
and there's plenty of shitty libertarian ideas. Like there's shitty ideas in all sorts of ideologies. And again, I think we should engage with each idea individually.
This is, by the way, why people think that I'm being coy when they ask me, so what do you identify in terms of your politics? And I say exactly what you just said. I'm an ideas guy. If you ask me what's your view on immigration or on the death penalty, you think I'm an ultra conservative. If you ask me about gay rights and transgender rights, you think that I am a Portland, Oregon advocate. So depending on the issue you ask me, I move around to different parts because I'm an ideas guy. I think if more people had that commitment, then we wouldn't be quite as tribalized, if I can put it that way.
I'm with you, and I think that's the only way we get out of this. Look, I'm very much, I lean far more left than I do right because I grew up on welfare. I grew up in poverty. We had food stamps when I was a kid. I remember those times. I remember being poor. And I will never say that I don't believe in social services or social safety net. I think that's crazy. But that saved my family. And my parents worked their way out of it. My mom and my stepdad worked their way out of that and eventually got off of it and eventually did well. I saw it happen. So I saw the benefit of hard work, but I also saw the benefit of having a social safety net.
Sure.
So I'm very progressive in that. But I value hard work and discipline more than fucking anything. And I when someone says, "Oh, I can't this because I'm triggered by this," shut the fuck up. Like I know what that is. I know weakness. I know nonsense. I know excuses. I know slovenly behavior, and it should never be praised, ever, because it's not good for you either.
Yeah.
And the feelings that you get when someone like leaves and pretends that everything you're doing is fine and you need a mental health day. I get it. You need a mental health day. Like a friend of mine who's an employer, she employs people, and she was saying that like some of her employees are saying, "I need a mental health day today." She's like, "You're not sick. Get the fuck to work.
Right.
What are you talking? You want to get paid for this mental health day? Show the fuck up." We're not talking about your parents just died in a car accident. No, you have a high level of anxiety today. It's this Roe versus Wade thing. I saw it in the news and I need a mental health day. Fuck you. Show up at work. Show up at work and work harder. Get the fuck out of here.
You need to be a
with
bit
this.
more animated, Joe.
I get so crazy about it because I know what it is.
But by the way, I see it in my own environment with the number of students who now file for special services through the Office of Disability or whatever it's called. So for the first 20 plus years as a professor, I almost had no one, because when you file with them, for example, you'll get 50% more time on your exam. But
Yeah.
you never find out because it's confidential. So I never find out this person suffers from this issue, therefore that. So all I get is an instruction that person X needs 50% more time on the exam, right? Well, I used to never have any of these filings, and now in any given semester, I may have, quite a large percentage. 10% of the students are somehow in the. So what happened? There's been a growth in the incidence of whatever disability you have to file, but no, it's part of the grievance infrastructure, right?
It's been an infestation of indulgence.
Exactly.
Yeah, and look, you can always find reasons why you can't get out of bed. I can find reasons every day. We can always. And by the way, those things, thinking in negative ways like that, it becomes a pattern. It becomes a part of the way your mind interfaces with the world.
Right.
And it just creates more and more incentive for you to continue those patterns. And those patterns become comfortable. Just like becoming a loser, failing, falling apart, not following through with things, fucking up jobs, getting divorced all the time, gambling away all your money, going in, like, all those things are patterns. I don't have to tell you, literally. But all those patterns they're so easy for people to fall into, and you can't accept that. You cannot accept that because there's been plenty of people out there that have had those patterns to turn their life around, and that's what I encourage people to do. I don't say the things that I say because I'm a mean person and I want to shit on people that are weak. I want people to be strong. Right. I want people to be strong with themselves, and I want people to recognize that there's value and being disciplined. There's value in getting your life together. There's value in truth. There's value in honesty. There's value in hard work. There's value in camaraderie and friendship and love and being a good person. And it's hard to be a good person.
And
There's value.
Aristotle has already said all those things that you just said.
Yes.
But
and
you go on thinking you're the first one who said it.
No, I'm not thinking.
No,
I definitely am not.
I'm teasing you.
By the way, we're 3 hours in. How
Oh,
about Crazy.
you know, I didn't even
3
know if it
hours.
was an hour or 2 or 3.
Crazy, it flies by.
You are amazing.
The Parasitic Mind is available now. Did you do the audiobook? Please tell me you did.
No, it's from the time when you got angry at me, nothing's changed. It's not me who
God
gets.
damn it.
I know.
Why don't they let you do it? Tell these fucks.
I know.
Your silky smooth voice
I know.
would be so much better than some fucking actor reading your bullshit. With the next book, will you read it?
I am going to do everything in my
Yes.
power to adhere to your view.
Who is the publisher?
The publisher of the book is Regnery. The audiobook. I cannot
Regnery,
read.
please get your shit together. The Godfather should be reading his own book.
I am the Lebanese Barry White.
Yes. I mean, the smooth voice. I need it. I need it on the audiobook. I don't need. If I heard some other guy reading your words, I'd be like, wow.
Not just my words. Many cases, it's my personal history
Yes.
in Lebanon.
Right. Exactly. This
I-
is nonsense.
I'm with you, brother.
Let's go. Come on. Delete that old one. Start fresh with a new one. But either way, the book is fantastic. Just read it. Don't even get the audio version. Well, I guess do whatever. But know that this man wrote it, and it's available, and it's awesome. I appreciate you, brother.
Oh, thank you so much.
And your podcast is available
The Sad Truth on podcast, Apple, on YouTube. It's
on
everywhere.
everything.
On everything.
Beautiful. Always a pleasure.
Thank
Always a
you.
pleasure, my friend.
Cheers.
All right. Bye, everybody.
More of
There is
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
the Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
See. We rolling? Oh, we're up and rolling. Excellent.
Nice.
Here's a shout out to my friend Megan for giving me this nasty ass fucking liquor. Estancia. Straight out of Mexico.
you can like taste the plants in it.
Yeah, you can. I don't know what plants they're using, but whatever they are, they should burn them. That shit's so nasty. It's so strong. She loves this shit. She drinks it all the time. I don't know. I wonder if she's getting back on Twitter. Megan Murphy got banned from Twitter because she said a man is never a woman. Banned for life.
Permaban.
Permaban. That's it.
You can't come after those people.
You can't talk crazy. You can't say.
It's a couple of you can talk crazy. It was a couple. I would say once you start dealing with the rainbow,
Yes.
you done crossed the line.
Well, you can talk crazy, but you can say things like if you go out in front of the Supreme Court judge's house, burn their shit. If they leave the house, don't let them sleep. You could say crazy shit like that.
Absolutely.
You could say that. Like they're doing that now, and no
Yeah.
one's getting in trouble for that.
Lori Lightfoot just said
Call to arms. Call to arms. Like holy shit, bitch. The fuck are you saying?
What
you
are
have
you
the
saying?
most violent city in this country. It's a real problem, and you're literally calling to arms. You know what arms are? Those are guns, bitch. Holy shit. Jesus, Beetlejuice.
Out of all people to call
Urges.
to arms.
Call to arms against the Supreme Court. That is so crazy.
Out of all
Now,
people.
here's the thing. Do we know for sure yet whether all this leak is factual? Has that been...
The leak is factual, but there's other things that can happen that would stop the
Roe versus Wade
power
being
of that. Yeah.
overturned?
yeah.
Dark times.
I
okay,
have-
Jesus.
It is. We are in some of the darkest times, man.
Strange, right?
Yeah, I haven't looked into the leaks. I haven't really cared to. I usually just wait for somebody like Jamie to be like, yeah, it's real. All right, cool.
Yeah,
Thanks,"
exactly.
I'm too busy doing other things. But the Roe v. Wade has been a very interesting conversation. I've been following it a little bit, covered it on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of just sick though, right? Like, you got people saying that like the right is bad and all this other stuff, but they're advocating for the death of babies. It's just like,
Yeah, it's a weird. It's like we're calling it a woman's right to choose, and it is a woman's right to choose, right? It is a woman's right to choose whether or not she has an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And but then like, how long into the term are you cool with it?
Right.
That's where it gets weird. Because
Yeah.
like nobody wants to talk about that. Like I'm like if you it's a cluster of cells and you take a plan B and it's gone, everybody's pretty cool with it.
Yeah.
But you get to like 5 months.
Yeah. It's moving around and stuff.
It's got
It's,
hands.
you know, that's been one of the hardest things for me to wrap my mind around, right? Like, so this is a question I ask and I'll ask you, right? Let's say you're governor of Texas or whatever, right? And a woman wants a late term abortion, okay?
Yeah.
Are you going to incarcerate or charge her, charge the doctor, or allow them to just do what they want and be free? What would Joe Rogan do?
Joe Rogan does not want to be governor, first of all, because Joe Rogan does not want those kind of responsibilities.
Right.
I think that's a fucking super complicated issue. And
Right.
I mean, you know, someone said this to me the other night. One of my friends, he's like, they were talking about abortion in cases of rape, and he goes, "Well, if your father's a piece of shit, does that mean that you should die?"
can't
It's like
carry
the
him.
child did not ask
Yeah.
for his father to be a piece of shit.
Right.
What happens to the kid then?
Yeah. It's very hard. Like I can't come to a conclusion on it, right? So I think to answer that question, I'm saying if she wants to have a late term abortion, she should go ahead and do it, right? That's my stance. Mostly because I lean more on the anarchist side of things. Also because I study history, right? So you think about like
I can't carry
Spartans, right? Spartans, if a child came out and had a defect, this
They
is
just take it to the
post-
woods.
Yeah, they took it to the woods and tossed it. Or tossed it
Yeah.
off. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is a form of eugenics. This is a form of like cleansing your race, whatever. And it's be quite controversial, but I'm a fan of it. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but we are human beings and we are here to preserve life, and we are here to preserve life for our tribe and for our people. And it's like sometimes you have to make decisions that are long term, right? For your people, to make sure your people survive. So I'm like, do we want another blue-haired liberal running around? Like, go ahead, hit the button on that, dog.
But the thing about blue-haired liberals is sometimes they get older and then they have children of their own,
Yeah.
and then they get mortgages and they have jobs,
Right.
and then they start understanding the tax system, they understand where money goes, and they start getting red-pilled, and then they start becoming more conservative and more pragmatic, and they change,
This is true.
you know?
This is true.
My friend Bridget Fedesi, she told me that when she was in her 20s, she was like AOC. She goes, I was like a full-on lefty, progressive, like all the way, and now she's, I mean, I don't know where she would categorize herself. I'd say she's a centrist. But if you're a centrist to people on the left, you're Hitler.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
You're a centrist, you're alt-right. You know?
Yeah. I mean, the left has gone so far left that the center is now like right.
It's well, you saw that meme that Elon Musk posted. He posted this meme like where he is, where the right is, and where the center is, and that the left keeps moving further and further away, and now it looks like he's the right because they keep moving where the center is.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I actually don't believe that there is a left or a right. I view politics as a sphere, right? And at the core of this sphere, right, is no state, no government, right? And the further you get away from that is more government you're advocating for, right? So there are times and places where the right advocates for state interference and the left advocates for state interference. So it's like a measure of how much do you want the state involved in your life and when and where, because everybody chooses a place. Like, you know, the right is like, yeah, ban abortions, right? And it's just like, okay, so you're partly a statist.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the left wants like welfare, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's where they want status. So it's just like, what degree of state do you want involved in your life? And then how much of it and then when and where, right? So it's more of a sphere than a left or right thing. There really is no left or right.
That's a good way of putting it, because that is true, that there are times on both sides from both parties want the state to step in and take care of business. And, you know, I'm more of an issues person. I used to think of myself as like left wing, but as time goes on, I think I'm more, it's like there's a lot of things on the left I don't agree with, but most things I do. But it's issue to issue. And the problem is
Right.
people subscribe to all of the things that their tribe subscribes to.
Bingo.
So if their tribe is like pro Second Amendment or pro woman's right to choose or pro illegal immigration, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
If your side says that, you start chirping. Burp, burp, burp. You start just saying exactly what your tribe wants. That's a problem.
That's the grift.
Yeah, that's the good.
That's the grift,
That's the
right?
grift.
So, and that's what has become one of the biggest problems, I think, is the rise of the grifters, right? And the grift content. Basically, what happened was, at some point, in order for people to take you serious, you had to have a certain amount of education on the matter, some sort of grasp of politics. You had to be smart. Right? Now it's just like all you have to do is know the talking points, and you can get a huge following and become an influencer and influence people's decisions and get hired by politicians and people. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
So before it was like the politicians were the working class, or the political. I'm sorry, the media, right? Now because of social media, you have any old Joe, no pun intended, can pop up and be an authority.
Yeah.
An authority on America and society, right? But again, this is the problem with the right. The problem with the right is they're being misled because they dumb themselves down to a few talking points, whatever it is. So they dumb themselves down and allow them to be led by people who have no educational background, and I don't mean traditional. I'm just saying just haven't really done the studies or history, but they've dumbed themselves down to like 3 points. And it's just like
What are those points? Like pro-life,
pro-life,
Pro
free
First
speech,
Amendment.
and Second Amendment.
and the First Amendment thing is really because of what's happening to conservatives on social media. Like you would always think in the past of liberals as being like pro First Amendment, like the ACLU supporting Nazis' right to exist. That was back in the day, in the early days, with Jewish lawyers, and they were supporting Nazis' rights to protest and exist because they were saying that free speech is an absolute thing. It means you want free speech for people who you absolutely disagree with. You don't like, you disagree with them, but you think they should have free speech.
Yes.
Which leads us to this Trump thing. Because Elon Musk is talking about getting Trump back on Twitter. He's like,
Is he?
Yeah, he said he should absolutely be allowed back on Twitter.
Absolutely, I believe
And
so.
yeah, and he said that it was outrageously stupid and it was morally wrong to ban him from Twitter.
Yes.
And so they were questioning him. They're like, what if someone incites something? He goes, well, maybe a temporary ban. Like, he's a free speech absolutist.
Yeah. That's beautiful. My thing is, when people talk about free speech, usually they're referring to the Constitution, right? And remind me to tell you how I've rewritten the Constitution.
You rewritten it?
Yeah, I rewrote the Constitution.
It's that.
We're gonna get into that. But free speech, right? Okay, we understand that there's free speech that is protected by the law.
Right.
That don't matter. The speech the reason why speech isn't free is because of your cohort, your friends, your cronies, the left, whoever. These are the people that are destroying free speech. Free speech ain't free. It's gonna come at a cost, right? So, for example, like people pop up with like free speech social media platform. Right. It's technically not a free speech social media platform because if I go on that platform and I say something crazy, somebody's still going to pick that up and get me fired from it. There's still going to be consequences no matter where I go on the internet. People can still see what I say.
Yeah, but free speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. It just means you have the ability to express yourself. That's what free
Correct.
speech is.
Correct.
The thing is, like, what should your boss be able to fire you for? Like, that's where it gets slippery because there's certain things that people can say, example, like what if you said, I don't think January 6th was one of the worst things that ever happened to America. I think it was a bunch of fucking morons who believed in QAnon, who rushed to Capitol and took selfies,
Yeah.
and is largely idiots with a few dangerous people mixed in with it.
Yeah.
You can get fired for that.
Wow.
You could get fired. If you worked for some
Right.
super liberal tech company, they would go, you do not align with the values of our company. And you're like, but I'm just saying, this is my opinion. I see those guys, like that dude with the fucking buffalo helmet on, that retard with the face paint. Like that guy is not dangerous. He's an idiot.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's a silly person who believes dumb shit, and he's gullible, and he lives with his parents. And he's a grown-ass man. Yeah. Grown-ass man. But that's what you expect
Right.
from a guy like that. You
Yeah.
expect, okay, this guy is not a... Listen, man, if you got a wife and kids and a job and a fucking mortgage and a bunch of shit to do and you got gold, you don't have time to go to the goddamn Capitol and put a buffalo helmet on.
That's true.
That's dumb people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of dumb people. So if you can talk dumb people and, you got to go there and take what's ours, like... Yeah, that's inciting. Yeah, that guy's an idiot. Yeah, he should be in trouble. Everybody should be in trouble. You shouldn't do that. But to say that is like World War II, that's like Pearl Harbor, or that's like D-Day, or that's like, September 11th, this is crazy talk. That's just a bunch of morons.
Right.
It's a disaster. It looks horrible. Definitely need to clean that up. Definitely should have had more security. There's a lot of shit about that day that's fucked. Like the cops opening up the gates, letting people through. Like, what is all that about? Yes.
Yeah.
How about the fucking the known FBI agents who were inciting violence? They were telling them, you gotta get in there. We gotta take what's ours.
Yeah.
They had people that were there.
Yeah.
They know for a fact. We know that.
Absolutely.
The fucking FBI. Imagine the FBI themselves trying to get people to do shit that's illegal so they can arrest them. They're so good at that.
They're so great.
They're
at that.
so good at that. They're wizards at that shit.
January 6th, I thought it was beautiful, man.
Why'd you think it was beautiful?
A white man going to give him some freedom, as Uncle Hotep would say. I'm on my channel. I always talk about I'm looking for the day for the white man to get on his horse, grab his musket, and just bring us back, give us some freedom, right? Like, where's that white man? Like, it seems like we've been neutered, right? And it's just like, I know as a black man that if the white man ain't free, I'm definitely not free.
But what are they not free from? I mean, what they were saying is that the election was stolen. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, but
Right? That was the whole call to arms not call to arms, but
Right,
That's
call
what
to
Trump
action,
said.
yeah.
Yeah. Trump was like, you have to make a strong presence, and
yeah, but there's a whole lot of things wrong with the state and how the federal government is playing Americans, right?
for sure.
From monetary all the way down, right? So it's a whole bunch of different things. But like the media is saying, this guy's a white supremacist, or that guy's a white nationalist, and white nationalism is becoming a big problem in this country. It's like, wait, when, where? Like, stop it, you're lying.
When
You know what I
Biden
mean?
said that, he said it was the biggest problem our country faces, bigger than
Right.
terrorism.
Yeah, he said bigger than terrorism.
And
right.
everybody just let him. They just let him say that.
Yeah, it's like blatant lies. So I'm just like. So when I saw January 6th, I covered the whole thing live. Like, we had Mukhtar on the ground, and I was like, yo, this is great. Let's go.
You had someone on the ground?
Yeah, we had Mukhtar was on the ground. Yeah, and we had him calling live. It was great. I was a big fan of it. Was there a lot of? I'm sorry, yo. I was like, yo, this is like a beautiful moment in history. I thought it was one of the greatest moments in all of American history.
That's so ridiculous.
To me, personally, I'm just like, yeah, get back. Like, that's what I wanted to see. Now, storming the Capitol and all that stuff, like, I don't agree with that. And some
You just agreed
stupid.
with protesting, going there, not storming the Capitol.
Yeah. And, I mean, some people storm the Capitol. Some people just kind of politely walk.
Did you see Into the Storm, the HBO documentary on QAnon? It's all about that.
Yeah?
You should watch it. It's pretty wild because it shows like who instigated and started QAnon,
Yeah.
and who was running the forums, who was running 4chan, and who like set up all this QAnon shit, and how they did it and how they manipulated people. And they also focus on the very people themselves. You get to see how gullible some of these people are. They're very simple people, and they get talked into believing that Trump is gonna like bring America back and rescue it from the evil people. All these people are going to jail, and Trump is gonna. And then when no one went to jail, you can see at the end of it, they're like, but they realize they got duped.
Yeah.
Because they're fairly simple people. It's kind of sad because to take someone from being like a QAnon believer who's not very educated, who believes dumb shit, and to get them all the way out of that to see the big picture of life itself and what the real influences are and how this all is set up. It's too much of a journey for most of those folks. They don't have the time or the energy to do that. So you're looking at these people that are just going to wait around till the next person tricks them into some stupid shit.
Yeah, I think everybody's looking for everything.
Yeah.
People looking at Trump as a hero. I like Trump. Ran again. I'm definitely happy to I think people have to look at that. What are you doing for yourself? Another big problem with the conservatives, whatever you want to call it. They're in reactionary mode, right? Like they log on to find out what the left is doing today. So which means the left is basically leading the way, right? The left is controlling the battle. It's just like, why don't we just come online and be like, yo, today we're celebrating families. Today's like heterosexual, right?
Be proactive.
Be proactive,
Yeah.
right? And I think everything's just been reactive, and that kind of like gives the left control over the whole situation.
Well, I think most conservatives feel like there's very little representation for conservatives online. There's only Fox News, and when they put like Tucker Carlson clips like that, or Australia, they got that Sky News. And
Right.
Is that OAN network? Is that still around? They got kicked off of DirecTV, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. I believe they got kicked off of. It was either DirecTV or one of the cable networks, one of the big cable
Probably
networks.
talking about the Jabby.
It could be about that. I think they just decided not to renew their contract, but guarantee that it's about the influence that they have because they're pretty extreme. There's no. But when you look at the amount of people that are on the left that are in the media, like the left influenced media is crazy. It's like
ridiculous.
CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS. You keep going down the line. MSNBC. You just keep going and going and going and going and going. It's everything. It's literally everything.
Broke my heart, man. Being a young black kid, my mom collecting Ebony magazines, Jet magazines. When I'm young and I'm like, one day I'm gonna be on Ebony. One day I'm gonna be on Jet or Black Enterprise magazine. And then my views are forming, and then I'm like, wait, hold on. I'm completely blackballed. I'll never be on Ebony magazine.
You're gonna be on Fox News.
So I ended up on Fox News.
Tucker Carlson. People are gonna be mad at you. Tucker will have you on.
Yeah.
He might have you on after this.
Yeah. No, it's just. It was like really like sad. It was a sad moment for me realizing that I may never see black media.
Do you think that one of the things that happened during the pandemic was a lot of the mandates pissed off a lot of African Americans because there's a large percentage of African Americans that were not vaccinated.
Yes.
And they were not interested in getting vaccinated, and they were locked, like especially in New York City.
Yeah.
Locked out of everything.
Yeah.
Just locked out.
Yeah.
And that made a lot of people go, "Hey, what is this? Like, what party are we in?" Because Democrats, for the most part, count on African American votes because they majority vote Democrat. But like with something like that, that's one of those things that makes people tip. They're like, "What are you saying?" And then you hear Ron DeSantis was saying, I do not support mandates. I do not support anything that restricts your freedom. We have to protect freedom at all costs." And a lot of people are like, that guy in Florida's got a fucking point.
Right.
Like, what side are we on here?
Yeah. Medical apartheid, man.
Yeah.
This is white supremacy, right? It's like when we talk about like white supremacy. So they try to say like the right is the white supremacists, but these people are literally mandating for a medical experimentation for people who have a higher rate of adverse reactions to these medical procedures, right? They're saying no to these procedures. It's still like a form of racism. Like I hate using that word because it's like watered down now.
It's a form of discrimination.
It's a form of
But it's not-
discrimination.
I don't think it's racism, but it definitely impacts one race higher because there's a higher percentage of people that are unvaccinated and likely distrustful of medical procedures.
Right. And then it's mandated, right? Especially if you work for like my sister, mandated, right? She had to get it. right? Or she gonna lose her job. So think about all the black people that work in the medical industry that potentially could lost their job or had to compromise their body cavity, right? The freedom of their choice. My body, my choice. Like, no, it's not. It's the state's body and the state's choice. You don't get to make that. So, for example, like when people were celebrating the OSHA, right? OSHA stance in SCOTUS, right? So, yeah, they said publicly, private companies can't mandate it. But then they said, well, if you work for the government, then it is mandated, right? So that means all those black employees that work for the government are now mandated. Well, all races, obviously. But it's just funny because black people are the most resistant to this thing as compared to all other races, right? And the Democrats are like, no, go get it. Go get it. So it's like, do they really care?
Well, this My Body, My Choice this is where it's interesting because it's happening right after mandates, and now it's the abortion discussion. And it's like, well, I thought you said my body, my choice. What are you saying?
A week later.
Yeah. Not only that, it's not even logical because it's not your body, your choice, even if you've already had COVID, which is really crazy. They want you to get vaccinated, even if you've had it, which is unscientific.
Right.
It literally doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit with the studies. The studies show that you're far better protected if you've survived COVID than even if you get vaccinated. It's far longer protection. It's better protection. And they're still like, nope, get it. You gotta, line these pockets, kid. And that's the only. Unless the only other argument you could say is that like we don't know what kind of protection you have from getting COVID because you could have been one of those asymptomatic people and it might not have bestowed significant protection to you.
Right.
That would make sense if the COVID vaccine didn't provide only temporary protection anyway.
Yeah.
Because it does.
Yeah.
It's like it wanes after a while, which is why they keep wanting people to get shot up again and again and again.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. Times that we're in the past 2 years, I had COVID a couple of times, and I watched you, and I was like sick, feeling like I'm dying. I'm about to see Joe Rogan so he can get me some of his mama antibodies.
How bad were you sick?
I was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't go to the hospital because that's where they killing people at. Like I don't know how much I'm allowed to say on here, but I was telling people, I'm like, COVID ain't killing people out. For example, when we talk about the what's that machine?
Respirator. Yeah.
Respirator is for you. And if anybody's in the medical industry, they know once you go on that, it's usually just to keep you alive so your family can see you before you pass on.
Yeah, 80% of the people who got on the respirator wound up dying.
Right. So what did everybody say at the height of it all? We need more respirators. Get more respirators out.
That's what they thought, though. There was a lot of confusion in the beginning because it was a novel virus and they didn't know what the proper treatment was. I don't necessarily think you can blame people for that because that's really what they thought. They thought we had to get people respirators, and they thought people were just dying like crazy. As it went on, then they realized, like, oh, the respirator may actually be killing people. One of the things it was the respirators were blowing people's lungs out. Yeah, and so there was multiple problems with that. But that was just because it was the beginning of the pandemic.
I mean, my hotel peoples was telling me as soon as they saw the respirators going on, they're like, oh no. Like I had Dr. Tanah Ricks on. He pointed this stuff out about the PCR test. He's like, oh, based upon the cycles that you're running this, you're gonna get a bunch of false positives.
Yeah, they changed the cycles.
So when you say that you have an industry of medical, here I got you. Young black biochemist telling you. Little guy. He's nobody. Wait, he knows you're telling me this group of medical professionals don't know?
We augment your skill.
And then I got Jehudi Ma'at Rob who's telling me the respirators won't work, but this group of people telling me that they didn't know this was...
I think there's a lot of people that don't look into things.
Absolutely.
They just follow the narrative, they do what the guidelines are, and then they keep going, including doctors.
Including doctors. Yeah. Including doctors. I think once you go to college, you basically lose your brain. you pay to donate your brain to the people that run these institutions, and then they zap it.
Some people don't. Some people come out of there with their critical thinking skills intact, and they have their own opinions that go, but they'll talk about them in hushed tones and quiet. They get together and go, I don't think we should be vaccinating children. Just there's no around.
Anybody hear me?
There's no real evidence.
Yeah.
Why don't children seem to be fine?
Right.
They want to keep it quiet.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
then the other group of people that were least likely to get vaccinated were PhDs.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, that's crazy. PhDs were a large group of them just going, nah, I'm going to hang on that. I'm going to wait a little bit. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, here's what was eerie for me. I believe it was 2019, 2020, right before the demi hit. I had Sister Samaya on my platform, and she was like, yo, they're passing legislation in New Jersey to make religious exemption for vaccination no longer a thing. They're trying to get rid of it. They're trying to ban it. This was getting passed in New Jersey legislation. Then the demi hits.
The demi. What's the demi?
Demi, the pandemic.
Oh.
Pandemic, right? I'm used to censoring myself.
Why do you have to censor yourself?
Because YouTube algorithms and stuff.
Oh, yeah, YouTube. I escaped that fucking claw just in time.
Yeah, you did.
I just got out.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I was.
You have to. I don't trust them anymore. They're just fucking banning people for all kinds of shit. They're banning people for citing legitimate medical studies.
Right.
They're deleting their podcast.
Last week, the FDA updated something about, something about the vaccine, COVID or something, and then Twitter put like a warning on people that were repeating the FDA.
Yes. It was the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Yeah.
When they limited the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to people over 18, they tried to limit it because of blood clots.
Yeah.
So they were putting a warning on the FDA's statement, which is wild. Instagram is doing it too. When people would post that on Instagram, they would have that COVID-19 warning on the bottom of it.
Yeah. I'm on my second Instagram
brother.
account now, so I'm familiar.
You're on your second?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the banning over there. It's funny with Elon buying Twitter. I'm happy he did. I'm waiting for I just think the deal still got to be finalized, but something changed at Twitter.
Yeah.
I think the people that were in charge of shadow banning and censoring must have left or something. Or
I think that's probably very likely. Either that or they knew what they were going to do, or if they do sell it, it's time to clean house now. Did
get rid
you
of all the
see the difference in engagement?
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Bro, I'm like, wait, I was shadow banned this whole time.
Yeah.
Like, my engagement is like 10x now.
I gained 700,000 Twitter followers in 2 weeks.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Bro. What were they doing up there?
The only other option, the other possibility rather, is that those are bots. That I gained a lot of bots.
Okay, so
But
yes,
goddamn, if that's true.
yes, there are bots, right? However, my YouTube account started growing faster, and that was unusual, right? Because I had my YouTube link in my bio, or my Twitter bio. So usually I get a trickle in, but as soon as that buy went through, I saw my YouTube subscribers start going up abnormally, and I'm like, oh, it's finally getting released. I'm finally getting access to eyes I never had access to. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's wild to me, man. And like last time I came on here, I told you I was like, I don't really care about this celebration. And now I'm like, I still agree with that statement. And like they've been holding me back.
They've been holding you back. They've probably been holding a lot of people back.
Yeah.
And they think they're morally right to do that. And it's a weird position to be in, to have that kind of power when you're dealing with essentially what's the world's town hall.
Right.
You know, and that's really what it is. It's like it's the world's place to express ideas,
Yeah.
and it's been curated by a bunch of dorks.
Yeah, a bunch of people. Well, there's rungs, right? You got the ruling class, and then you have the ignorance underneath them who think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Right?
Yeah, they all think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they think it's morally wrong to let certain people express themselves because they're worried that gullible people are going to listen to them and then join up.
Yeah.
But that's just part of life. You have to have better arguments to counteract the bad arguments. You can't just ban the bad arguments. If you think they're a bad argument, then step up to the debate stage or to, Twitter or whatever and come up with a better argument and let people see how this plays out.
Yeah, that was my thing. I always said if somebody's not willing to debate, it's usually because they don't believe in whatever they're saying. And that was my thing, like with the whole pandemic. Like, take your doctor and let's put him on stage with Trump's front, whatever they called him, Trump first line doctors, whatever front line doctors, whatever they debate him.
Right.
Where's the debate?
Yeah.
You believe what you say? Well, let's debate, and then let the people decide which side I'm going to choose.
Yeah.
We never got that debate. It was never fair to allow people to see both sides of this thing.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's when they started coming after me. When I had Robert Malone on and Dr. Peter McCullough. And when they were saying, that these discredited doctors, hold on. You can't call that guy discredited. Because first of all, Peter McCullough is the most published doctor in his field in history. He never had a single complaint about him being some sort of a fringe doctor. He was very respected, highly credited. But it wasn't until he had patients that had adverse reactions to the vaccine that people started getting upset with him. And now he's left universities, involved in lawsuits, and it's a big fucking deal. But to say that guy is like just some fringe wacky doctor, like not when you hear him talk.
Yeah, and same thing with Malone. Right? Like he was involved in the mRNA
He
technology.
personally holds 9 patents for the creation of mRNA technology.
Right.
Why?
And he was this guy.
Yeah. And you listen to him talk, and they were trying to discredit mass formation psychosis. That's not a thing. Of course it's a thing. He's talking about it. It's a real thing. You know it's a real thing because you know that people do that.
Right.
They get panicked. They get anxious, they're filled with anxiety, and someone comes along with a solution, and anybody who doesn't go with that solution, people yell at them, they get upset and frantic. Most people are living with like a level of anxiety already that was barely manageable. I mean, just regular life before the pandemic was barely manageable for a lot of people.
Yes.
The pandemic comes along, and those people are screeching banshees now.
Right.
They're out of their fucking mind, because they were barely hanging on when everything was normal here for them.
Yeah. And then there was the destruction of the economy.
Yep.
Small business.
I keep hearing there's a formula shortage, which is terrifying.
Oh, the baby formula. Yeah, I saw that recently.
How is that? What's going on? What's going on there?
I don't know.
How the fuck do you not have enough baby formula?
I'm happy they don't. First of all.
What?
Because I don't. And I'll tell you why.
Please do.
Baby formula ain't no good for babies.
It's not?
Not most of them are not.
But some women can't pump. Some women,
right.
For whatever reason, they're milk ducks.
Absolutely. And there's alternative formulas out there. Like there's really good. Some of them are like soy based. Like I don't get you on that. But like when you talk about, I don't want to name companies because that could be legal issues.
Right.
But the formula that's on the market has a lot of toxic ingredients in it. That ain't good for babies,
Like
right?
what? What kind of toxic?
I don't know. I haven't studied this stuff in years, but let people do their own research, right? Let people go. There's a lot of people that have done this research, right?
Let's see if we can find it. Find out what's bad about baby formula. Just Google what's bad about baby formula.
You might have to use
It might be a thing.
An alternative. That would give you bad.
What'd you say?
That would give you bad blog results. Like that's gonna give you
Oh.
goofy shit that people are trying to sell. Stuff.
How about toxic ingredients in baby formula?
That
Can you
might
Google
work.
that?
That might work.
Would that work? What are you doing over there, Jamie? You wrestling with that microphone?
But I don't know. You know, like
It's definitely better to have breast milk.
yes, absolutely.
But I think for some women, that's an impossibility.
Right. So then, all right, maybe you gotta have that formula, right? But I think a lot of women also can't afford the breast milk because the breast milk is expensive. You know, if you can't nurse.
Oh, you mean buying breast?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very
that's-
expensive.
Yeah, that stuff is very expensive. So it's hard to get alternatives. Blah blah blah. And the thing is, like, there are people that are making baby formula that is like organic, holistic, but because of like FDA regulations and certain guidelines, they gotta stay within, so they can't say, "Oh, this is safe for you." Right? But you can technically give it to you, but they can't put that on the label and say, "Oh, this is safe." You can get this stuff organic. But there's organic, like good baby formula out there.
So they can't call it baby formula? Is that what it is?
Yeah, well,
What do they call it?
It's like they market it towards like more college.
Huh.
So like it's like I want to say 6 to 12 months or 12 months to 24 months or something like that. Yeah, I just had a baby, so that's why I was.
Some of America's biggest manufacturers of baby food have not been adequately testing and removing products with dangerous levels of heavy metals, according to new U.S. congressional report. This is all part of an ongoing battle to make baby food safe. The new report says Gerber and Beechnut didn't properly test and remove these products, while Sprout Foods Incorporated, Walmart's Parent Choice, and Plum Organics were relaxed in their efforts. Arsenic, lead, cadmium, and mercury were found in rice cereals, sweet potato purees, juices, and sweet snack puffs, according to a previous report from the Subcommittee on Economic and Consumer Policy Committee on Oversight. At the time, the companies Nature sells Happy Family Organics and Happy Baby products. Beechnut, Hain, Earth's Best Organic, and Gerber agreed to the subcommittee's previous request for investigation. The subcommittee also reached out to Walmart, Campbell, and Sprout Organic Foods, which did not allow the investigation. Those companies later began cooperating.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
So there's a toxic baby food lawsuit case.
Yeah. And then so then you see the ADHD popping up, having metals,
Right. For parents who have bought food from any of the brands and have children with autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, both autism and ADHD have been associated with toxic metals.
So when I saw that, I saw this story pop up. So in the back of my mind, right? It's like in some ways it's bad because baby needs something, right? They need something,
Right.
But in another way, I'm just like, you know, it's characteristic.
Why is there a shortage? Why?
Well,
see,
the
Google
whole-
that. Why is there a baby food shortage? You know?
I thought it was because of
Is it the Putin price hike?
I thought it was because the
Look at that, 40% of baby food formula out of stock. Thread on infant formula shortage situation, which feels like a slow-moving train wreck. First, retail stock has been rocky for months. It was already bad over the holidays. Then a big recall plus plant shutdown in February made it worse. Oh, so it was a plant shutdown.
oh, that's right, because the plants have been burning down. You saw that?
Yeah, I did. That was like food production.
Yes, food processing.
Yeah, why is that happening? But man, if it's a good time to be a conspiracy theorist,
It's a great stuff.
because you know you got a lot of fucking ammunition.
Yeah, I tend not to look into this stuff. It's probably because it gives me anxiety.
Yeah, it gives me anxiety too. That's why I need weed. Mike Tyson weed.
Abbott Nutrition called it contamination after.
Possible contamination. Of several infants got sick and 2 died. Abbott Nutrition recalled and withheld some of the baby formula product due to concerns about possible contamination. Fuck. All this stuff is terrifying. Just when you hear talk about, you know, about food shortage, you keep saying food shortages are coming. People are saying food shortages are coming. I'm like, what, do something.
Yeah.
How do you know it's coming? Where's the food coming from? What is causing food shortages? Can that be fixed? Seems like you should fix that.
Yeah.
Giving all this money to Ukraine, which is, you know, great. Save the Ukrainian people. But shouldn't we be fucking fixing our food shortage with that money? What are we doing?
What did Lenin say? Lenin said about it was like this evil quote from Lenin that basically like was completely inhumane. I forget the exact quote, man, but like when you're dealing with Marxism, like Marxism is designed to demoralize and destroy a population, right? And so if you look at like the Holodomor, like that's like massive famine throughout history. So like when I see like the food shortages and I see Marxists running around in America, I'm like, oh, okay, this is the same play. Like I always tell people, I always say that the most important thing you got to study in history or Western history is the Russian Revolution. And we're kind of seeing that play out again here in America. So when I see food shortages, I go, okay, this is the famine that trying to manufacture, And then, you know, one of the enemies of Marxism, obviously, is right? So like they want to attack the middle class and da 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 da. But the idea is to squeeze us, right? And destroy us and then present themselves as the solution, right?
Yeah.
That to make themselves like seem necessary, right?
Right.
That's really what the play is. It's evil, but it's intelligent at the same time. Because if you're worried about food, how can you talk about the Fed?
Yeah, you don't think about anything but food when you're running out of food.
Right.
And it's really easy to get other things done.
Yeah.
Get people to, like, we can get you food, but we need to get you onto a centralized digital currency where we can ration the amount of food. Because there's a lot of people out there that are hoarding food.
Yes.
We have a hoarding food problem.
Yeah. Right, that's what they'll tell you, right?
That's what they'll tell you. And then they'll tell you, Hotep, if you just sign up for our digital currency and you get on that, well, you can't go on vacation because we saw some things you said on Twitter. So you have to clean up your social profile. So maybe some good positive tweets about the government.
Yeah, they'll limit your wallet. You talk about the CBDC.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, that's what they're doing in China. In China, they have a social credit score. And they attach that. If they attach that to digital currency, centralized digital currency, then they can choose what you can and can't spend your money on. Like, you want to buy a new house?
I'm sorry.
We can't have you do that. You're a little too radical. You said you're an anarchist, and you're happy that there's an infant formula shortage?
Yeah.
You heard your own podcast.
Sorry. Right.
You're allowed to have staples. You can have rice and beans for the next couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we get to that place where the government literally can tell you, like if
That's
they
where
have
it's going.
because most people are not going to do it. So most people aren't going to complain. Most people are going to be able to get whatever they want. Everything's going to be fine. But if it's just a few political opponents, a few loudmouths, a few problem people, and they shut them down, no one's going to say shit.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like they just create chaos, right? They just want to like disrupt everybody, just create chaos, keep everybody, like I always say, distracted, right? So the thing is, like, once you create the famine and you create the poverty, so the first people that are attacked by the poor lower class, survival, is the middle class, right? So you squeeze from the top and the bottom, and then that's how you squeeze out the middle class. And once you squeeze out the middle class, it's just us versus them. And then that's when it just becomes like more like a drone population of people, like the Matrix movie. Like we just become a battery system, and that's why.
Don't you think that's where we're going?
Yes.
But it's almost inevitable, right?
Yeah. We're gonna have the world is going to be bifurcated based upon organic and inorganic. Okay. Like we're talking about organic food. We're talking about like organic. So for example, like. Swimmer, right?
Which one?
The
one who's biologically male?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is bigger than that. You become part robot.
Right. Yes. Well, that's transhumanism.
Yeah.
That's
the next step. If we're willing to do like the gender bender thing, like what's to stop us? Like, hey, he was going to die. Now he's an Olympic gold medalist. Yeah. All we had to do is replace his spine with some fucking carbon fiber thing, or electric rods that makes your muscles fire far better.
Yeah.
I have. He's got fucked up. Bunch all powered by just the same way you're eating food and drinking water. It's all powered by the same thing. You get a big certain amount of vitamins. Whoa! You get this, and then you would be on the beach and you would see dudes with that big scar on the back on the top of their head. All the because we realize people are superstars. Only rich people would be able to do it. The rich people.
What you would have to do it. You'd have to do it just to compete. Like, think about going to a job interview, right? And it's an inorganic dude, and you're the organic dude. They're like, yeah,
Go get that inorganic
part.
If there was a thing they did like that, where everyone had a scar down their back and they replaced your scar and it's something far better, we would all have it.
Right.
It would be like shoes.
So what about the people that don't get it? What happens to them?
See, that's the problem with this this concept of like Neuralink is one of those things that they're talking about.
Right.
And initially, it's going to be used for people with injuries,
Right.
like people with spinal cord injuries. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
But if it does get to the point where it supercharges your brain, and then the rich people do it first, what if it costs $250,000 and you supercharge your brain? But then you have this giant head start. Like that's one of the only times in history where you could say, okay, this is unequal. This is like seriously unequal because you could potentially literally take over the earth in the time it takes for the poor people to get the brain implant.
Correct.
Like completely take over the earth.
Yeah.
You could have an intellect far superior to anyone who's ever lived and have instantaneous access to information downloaded right into your brain.
Yeah.
You'd be like a fucking human alien. And if you were greedy, if you started off greedy, or if you just said, look, better for me to control this because these other people are unethical, and you just decided to fucking overthrow all the governments. You're like, basically like, who was that chick, Scarlett Johansson in that movie where she takes that medication and she becomes like a god? Lucy. Yeah.
Lucy.
But it was like some crazy drug. She becomes a god. That's what it would be like, dude.
Yeah.
That's real. Because if you were super smart, then you would make a better version of that brain thing. You'd be like, this brain thing's dope, but you know, here's what they're getting wrong. And if you have a brain that's charged up,
But you're going super future.
I don't think it's that long now.
Really?
No, I don't think it's that long. I think we're looking at about 20 years.
What if you gave it to a dumb person, though?
What if you become super smart?
What if they
you
don't?
gave it to like Corky from Life Goes On and he takes over the world?
What if they just stay with bad ideas?
But no, it could happen now. Maybe they would have bad ideas. Just supercharged
They
bad
have really
ideas.
dumb bad ideas.
Right. No, it would be a thing where you wouldn't, like the morals and the ethics probably wouldn't change. Just the intelligence.
You add it to a 40-year-old guy, like, doesn't make him better.
Right, doesn't make it a lot better.
Gives him more information to deal with.
Or better, it might make him, you could execute things better. You could think things through better, but maybe you would still, like, morally be the same person.
It wouldn't. Here's the thing. Right? Here's where I think we got to level it off at. The inorganic is going to be the difference between him having the state-of-the-art Mac and you having some janky $200.
Yeah.
Just because we've got all this technology doesn't mean everything is going to be hyper-accelerated. Because if everybody has it, where humanity's moving faster as a whole, the inorganic is moving faster as a whole, but you're not going to have this accelerationism, I don't think.
Right.
Because everybody has it, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I think the real problem is that some people are just going to get this massive head start.
But the thing is, the people who are going to get the head start are the people who already have the head start. So
yes.
what changes?
Well, what changes is their power. Instead of like imagine if Bitcoin becomes the only money worth anything, and then everybody's like, "But I don't have any of it." Well, your money's not worth shit. You got to get new money. You got to get money in Bitcoin.
That's what's going to happen.
And then there's only a certain amount of Bitcoin, right? Like the Bitcoin number is finite, right? So like maybe there's no Bitcoin for it.
Right.
What the fuck are you talking about?
That's what's going to happen.
That's what's going to happen.
You just predicted the future.
I think that's going to happen in some sort of a way because I think this thing we do is inevitable. Like we make better and better technology, and we're all obsessed by it.
Right.
We're all obsessed by this thing that enslaves populations to stare at it all the time.
But that's Group A.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a look at Group B. organic people.
Yeah, all the yoga freaks.
Well, no.
All those people that
the
hang
yo-
in there and
well-
don't get fixed.
You're gonna be one of the organic people. You're gonna be the leader of the organic people, bro.
We're gonna get eaten.
No,
If I'm
we're
the
not.
leader of the organic people, we got a real problem.
No, we're not. Let me tell you why.
Please do.
Because we hack the devices.
Oh.
So the inorganic people, we're still using technology. Don't think that we're not jailbreaking the neural link.
That's true, right?
Right?
Someone can do that.
We're in Terminator. You gotta watch the movie Terminator. We're in that place.
And there's probably some kid who's like 18 years old who's in his basement somewhere trying to figure out some new version of it better than the original version.
Yeah. So,
He's gonna rewire it and fuck with it.
and then you look at like a movie like Demolition Man, right?
Yeah.
Where did those people live? They lived underground. Right? So, but that's a metaphor for where we're going, right? So here's a question I always ask people: is Joe Rogan mainstream or is he underground? Everybody tells me Joe Rogan mainstream, but I'm like, he's the leader of the underground. 5 most important people on this planet. Ready? Joe Rogan, Dana White.
This fucking list is ridiculous.
Dana White. Why Dana White?
Why Dana White?
Why Dana White?
Because he doesn't give a fuck?
Bingo! It's basically that, right?
Yeah.
It's the place, like when the whole pandemic went down, he like,
Yeah.
Right,
He
like-
led the way.
like, who else did that?
Well, he's a guy that's got fuck you money. And so he just does whatever the fuck he wants. He's
Right,
a,
but a lot of people
Legitimately.
fuck you money
They
that
get
go
scared.
along with the
yeah,
bull,
I
right?
don't want to lose it. It's scary.
And then in the top 3 is like that stand-up people on that.
Yeah.
Just say that today. in this
I
time?
watched him develop it.
Did you?
Yeah, we did a lot of shows together. I watched him develop it.
Oh, 'cause yeah.
At Stubbs in Austin, and then some of the touring that we did. Fucking expertly pieced together real story about a friend of his that killed herself because she was getting bullied for supporting. And that's like half of it. Like there's a big chunk that's that. It's all about that, and it's funny, and it's real. And anybody that says it's transphobic, all you're saying is that he can't talk about trans people. He's not talking about it as transphobic. Right? It's not. It's just not.
Yeah.
So you're saying he can't talk about it at all, or he's transphobic? Is this the level of sensitivity you're requiring? Like your subject can't even be discussed,
Can't even be discussed.
or you want to be removed from the network? You want fucking people to walk off the job and protest?
Attacked. They attacked him
God. Yeah.
like last week. You know what I'm saying? But that
That poor kid was mentally ill. The guy who rushed
he?
him on stage, yeah, he's mentally ill.
Oh, that's sad.
He's a homeless guy, and
Oh.
you know, the problem there was the security.
Mm.
You know, how the fuck did the dude get that close
Get
to Dave
that-
Chappelle? That's
yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, he should have never made it to stage.
No, you got to have better security.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just this Will Smith thing opened up the door for smacking comedians.
you know, the Will Smith thing was funny. I was on Will's side though.
Not here.
Were you really?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
But
How could you support that position?
uh,
What did he say? He wasn't even bad.
what? Well, when I say support Will's side, I don't mean supporting Will. I supported the idea that somebody got smacked at the Oscars.
Right.
That to me was special. Right? Like the
Right, it was
names are
human.
the names are variables, right? Like
Right.
it's just X and Y. X smacked Y at the Oscars.
Yeah. But the smack to me wasn't nearly as shocking as him quivering.
At the
Like when he was like, fuck your mouth. He was emotional.
Yeah.
And I don't think he had realized at that moment where he had fucking flipped his life upside down.
Yeah.
I don't think he totally realized that. For some reason, he thought he could get away with it. That is a crazy thing to think he can do. Just walk on stage, smack a guy, and then sit back down. And then he did it, and not only did he do it, but they gave him a fucking Academy Award later, and he went up to give a speech.
Yeah.
And in the speech, he didn't say, hey, I'm sorry I assaulted that guy.
Yeah.
He didn't even say that. He apologized for his actions. But he didn't even apologize to Chris Rock. Like, it's wild. There's no supporting that. But I do support the idea that someone got smacked.
Right.
Because it's a human moment.
Yes. It's a human moment in a place that's not supposed to be human.
Everything's fucking polished. We wear bow ties and shit. It's all goofy.
Exactly. That goof. That's what I love about it.
Oh, okay. I get that. Well, I love the fact that it wasn't really painful. Like, Chris didn't even punch.
Yeah.
You know, if Chris got hurt, then it would have been a real fucking problem. Like, dude, people get knocked unconscious from getting slapped all the time. All the time. All the time.
Like those smack contests.
I'm not saying that he smacked him with that kind of force. He did that. But what if he punched him? What if he punched him like that? What if he didn't punch him hard, but he punched him like that? If you just walk up and just smack him a little bit with your knuckles. Is that different? Because it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Bro, Boss Rutan used to knock people unconsciously in pancrase with slaps. In Japan, the early days of MMA, Japan didn't have like a UFC style organization. They had a thing called pancrase. So in pancrase, you're bare knuckle, but you can't close your fists. You can punch to the body, but to the head, you got to slap. So these guys were walking around like this and fucking smashing each other. You got to watch this dude, Boss Rutan. Boss Rutan, who's the king of pancrase. Boss is this badass striker from Holland. He figured out how to pull his hands way back. His hands were super flexible. So when he was hitting dudes, he wasn't using his fingers at all. It was all palm. And he was just smashing guys with his palms, which, by the way, is harder than your knuckles. It's actually better to hit somebody like that.
Yeah.
So my question is, if we're going to just let people slap people, why not let people punch people? Because it's kind of the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Nah, you're right.
This was Boss Rutan. This is like a Boss Rutan highlight. But he would smash people with his palms. So you could punch to the body, but then to the face you had a smack. And they wore shin pads and wrestling shoes.
I was about to say it looked like WWE.
Boss was a fucking savage. He was like the first real high-level striker that entered into mixed martial arts. Yeah, when he started fighting, people were like, oh shit, this is like some next-level power. Next-level Muay Thai from Holland. But it was smacks, okay? That's his technique. So you punched a guy.
Yeah.
You could knock someone the fuck out with a slap. So
Yeah.
are you just letting him slap not that hard? Like, what's the line there?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's wrong. Right. Yeah. Obviously, you're not supposed to like.
You can't be just smacking people.
Yeah, you can't just be walking around smacking people, I guess.
Those smack contests are ridiculous.
Yeah.
Where they just stand in front of each other and smack each other in the head. You realize
But how
like,
about
people
this?
go out cold from slaps.
Yeah. But how about this? How about in a time where there's no masculinity, we have violence?
Right. It's true. Extreme violence.
Well, Will Smith is an act of that. So is his reaction feminine or masculine?
Well, it's neither.
Okay.
It's foolhardy. It's not connected to a gender. It's just foolish.
Okay.
It's probably got some dumb male bravado.
Yeah.